We'd like to welcome everyone out to the Highland City Council on May 21st, 2024. It is 7:03 p.m. We'll begin our meeting with an invocation by Councilmember Scott Smith, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Ron Campbell. Scott?
Our kind Father in heaven, for the opening of the City Council meeting, we're very thankful for the opportunity that we live in a constitutional republic with representative government. We're thankful for the principles of freedom and democracy that we enjoy. We're thankful for the many citizens who have come to this meeting as council members and staff members. We're thankful for the opportunity we have to serve and find ways that we can improve our community. We ask you to bless us this day with thy Spirit so that we may have civil discourse, that we may work together to find solutions to issues that are in front of us at this time. And these things we pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please join me with the pledge.
Thank you. If you haven't had an opportunity, there's a sign-in roll here on both entrances to the door. If you'd all please make sure you've signed in. It helps if when you make a public comment that our recorder then can make sure the names and all that they have them down correct. We'd like to also now at this time, as we look across our agenda, we do not have any public hearings on the agenda. So if you're here to discuss with the council on anything that's on the agenda, I recommend you come up now during the unscheduled public appearance time, and you're welcome to come up and on any topic you'd like to talk on with the council. If it's one of the agenda items, just refer to the agenda item. If you'll please keep your comments, make sure you state your name clearly so our recorder can get it. And then if you'll keep your comments to 3 minutes. If you happen to hear someone that's already made the similar comment, just say, hey, I support that comment that person did. And then I'm going to ask that, because there can be difference of opinion, that you please don't clap or cheer on someone's, when they get up and state something. That way, if there's someone that has a different feeling, it does not preclude or hinder them in that feeling. So at this time, we'll now open up for unscheduled public appearances if there's those who'd like to come up and discuss items with the council.
Hi, friends. I'm Carly Tall, by the way. I have been dying to tell you guys and to come in and speak to you and tell you how awesome this new park is. We are there night and day, every time of year, rain or shine. It saves me from my 2-year-old and my 17-year-old. She takes them there to babysit. We love the park, hands down, no question. You guys are amazing for doing that. And I want you guys to know sincerely and heartfelt how much we love that. And I know it's taken a lot of time and energy and effort. And I mean, I know it has. I don't know how much it has. Like it's a lot, and I know that. So I want to make sure you guys know how grateful we are, because I don't want that to be drowned out. And my experience with each and every one of you sitting there has been that you have been aware of, concerned about, and interested in how we as citizens and residents feel. I have been able to come to you and tell you how I think about something and how it's affecting me and impacting me. And I'm hoping that as I have been hearing from neighbors and friends that there are things coming up that are big concerns, and I'm hoping that that's how they will feel too. And I'm hoping, from what I've heard, the picture that was posted here, all those, wait, where's the timer, by the way? Oh, it's right here. Oh, there was pictures right here, and I saw them, and they are not the same as what is going in. And I would love to use my time, and you know I'm a talker, and you know I could use every second of this, but I would love if somebody up there would use the rest of my minute and a half to explain how we've gotten from the picture that we saw to where we are today, and what this Ninja Corps stuff is happening, and why it is the way it is, and why there's things funded and not funded, because I think there's a lot of people that are concerned. I have concerned about safety and privacy and parking and traffic and funding and maintenance and all sorts of things. But I don't want to stand here and express them until I have all the information. So I would love for 1 minute if you guys could maybe use my time to tell them what's happening.
How about we, Carly, and I appreciate you coming. We haven't seen you for a bit.
I know.
How about we wait, there's an agenda item here where we talk about park hours, and maybe the council then can chime in after they've heard from all the different.
Whatever you want to do. I am only concerned that these comments could change if they've heard what you have to say. That's my only concern.
Council, would you like to address it now? Okay.
Thank you.
Since we recognize there might be some here, I think, so what Carly, just to rephrase what Carly was mentioning, was what maybe the renderings that were shown over the years and what's happened. I think you're talking about the Ninja course. Am I thinking that correct? On the Ninja course? And I'm going back, the park, and so Scott and myself, and so Scott, all this is kind of helping chime in. And about 2008 and 9 was when the park started to be heavily discussed. The property was purchased in 2008. 2018 and 19, the council had been making motions where we'd been trying to gather money to be able to get the park put together. We sold some property over in Spring Creek. We got $2 million from there. We did some property sell. I mean, we were trying to gather the funds together to be able to do the park. We then ended up coming in, the first park was going to be a pickleball course, the 27 pickleball courts. We had a lot of residents that showed up at that time and were concerned about that. The council listened. They redesigned the park. As we went into COVID, everything kind of went into hiatus because of COVID. As it came out in 2021, we started showing a lot of different drawings that were going on for the park. And probably that was one of the first times, I think, as council, they started looking at a Ninja. And you can, those others in the council now, we've had Kim and Brittany has now joined the council by that time in 2000. And so about 2021, we start having drawings, we start having meetings with residents where they can come in and see what the playground, we had different videos of playgrounds, we started showing drawings of what's different concepts that were going on in the park maintenance building, and I think Doug, was it 2019 or 2000 with the park maintenance building?
Right.
Okay, so right, we also, when we're looking at the park, there was a park maintenance building that was going to be going on the far west north corner. It was going
Which was the main park maintenance building
Yeah.
for all the parks,
Okay.
which we have since moved behind the community center.
and so that,
Yeah.
so that there was a park maintenance building that also was considered. And so as the residents discussed that, the reason I bring up with Doug, that I know that he was involved at that time with the park maintenance aspect. We then move into, like I said, 2021. We're starting to show drawings. The council is starting to see the layouts of the what the park might be like. I think we're showing it on here on that I think what we were starting to hear and see was not getting translated into our website as good. So the council had been aware of a Ninja course and, and talking about things going on with the Ninja course, but I don't think the drawings on the website were being updated. Aaron, am I thinking correctly here?
Yeah, so in about July of 2022, council said, we are doing a Ninja course, assuming we have funding for it. But you're right, we just never paid to update those drawings until about a month ago. So,
And so now we kind of move forward. The park, we've now approved the concept. We had a lot of different renderings on the park of what the cost would be, different layouts of the park. So pretty well by about 2021, 22, we're starting to now issue. Now here's the miraculous thing, and unfortunately, as the park changes, so does the budget. Back in 2000, 2001, with what was going on, the concepts, of course, with the pickleball, what we thought we could do a pickleball course at 35 to 40, now is at 75 to 80. Everything with inflation has just accelerated on us. Now, as that accelerated, we also got COVID funds from the federal government. And one of the things was to try to help with those funds to be used to be able to help with outside things or help people to be healthy. So we earmarked a lot of our COVID funds coming from the city to go to the park. And so, I mean, now we're starting to get enough funding to be able to move forward. We actually had very generous donors. Some of you are here that have donated. We appreciate that. We've had some generous donors that have stepped up for the playground. They stepped up for pavilions. They've stepped up for some of the pickleball, some of the playground equipment. We've had a donor for the baseball diamond. So we started having a lot of donors that were pretty good size that we're starting to step in. And we issued the purchase order for the park. Was it going to be, wasn't this time, I think it was what, January, February of last year, of 2023?
Or end of 2020.
Am I thinking right?
We actually had them under contract the year before.
In November.
And then, we more or less, everything came together to build last year. But but, yeah,
So I think it was November 2022. Now,
yeah.
at that time, the Ninja course was on the plans, but we said we were not going to be doing anything unless there was funding. We said that the Ninja course was on hold, everything else was kind of moving forward, and except for the Ninja course. And now there was also, we talked about some other different aspects, if it be lights for the baseball, some things that way, what was going on. Some of you remember that we, surf soccer, there was the surf soccer agreement that was going on. We were trying to get funds, or surf soccer was going to try to bring in some funds. We said we didn't want to have them be using the main park. We are still in somewhat discussions about them using some ground over by the high school, and that funds would go towards the park to help us finish some stuff. I'm saying, guys, we're trying to gather funds, because we're going, hey, we can go with phase one and get what we got, and then we're trying to move forward with what we can do at different phases. Scott, go ahead.
So let me just add to that a little bit. I think one thing the citizens really need to appreciate is, unlike any other city in the state of Utah, we have not bonded for this park. We have not gone into debt for this park. So we've got a lot of different things that have helped fund it, between donations, ARPA funds, selling land. We've changed park fees that we've got, and a few things like that. So that's really pretty amazing when I think about it. And so,
They're just trying to get more chairs. I was going,
oh, get more chairs?
I thought someone was having a health crisis.
Yeah, so
I'm
would
sorry.
I. I thought, I need to jump up here? Okay. But I just think people need to realize that, because as a city, we've almost paid off our bonds. And I think that should be appreciated.
No, and and like you said, now one of the things that also, when you talk about with the park, that we do need to recognize, funding for the park, everyone that moves here pays a park impact fee. Every new house, and that only can go towards new amenities. And so we did earmark some of that. We have enough money in the bank right now to pay off all of our bonds, but the bonds will not let us be paid. They won't accept our funds. In a sense, so we
Can't
have
pay them off early.
to pay them off. So we've had the money to pay off our bonds sitting in our account. And so anything that's now going to the park is the extra funds that we believe that it won't be needed to pay off the bonds. So on the amphitheater, on the amphitheater is probably last summer where that started to come into play. We've been using the amphitheater from Lehigh City. And so
Stage.
the stage that they would be able to pull in for the Highland Fling, but there had been some desire about having some type of amphitheater for, if it be Sunday night in the parks, or you see a lot of other cities that have little performances there in the park. And so that started to come about. I don't
That's
know if
removable, right?
the temporary stage is removable. What's being talked about now would be more of a permanent stage.
Yeah, and we've always planned on the temporary stage being there. Like, our power running to that is to manage the temporary stage. The idea of a permanent stage, I'd say, come about a year ago, just so that we could do something more regular, because it costs us every time we have to rent that stage from Lehigh City.
So now let's kind of move forward to where we're, as we go forth, we know the park. We were hoping to have it done earlier than when it got done on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, but the park opens on Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Now, as we're getting ready to go phase two, is where we're starting to look. The Ninja, we have seen as a council, most of the drawings we're seeing have always kind of had the Ninja course off on the west side of the park. So the Ninja course, I don't think for the council was a surprise. We'd always kind of thought that that's where it was earmarked to go. And so now, as it starts to become more reality, as we get ready to go to phase two, we have now issued a purchase orders, and going forth as phase two, which is your soccer fields, it's your baseball diamond, your trails, all the landscaping, all the xeriscaping. There is some desire that we had the earmark for the Ninja course is to make sure we have it really, to maybe go and actually outline it with cement so we don't have any utilities or different sprinkler systems. And that's where we start hearing from residents, hey, can you move the Ninja course? Can you move it over here? And so that was, I've personally went and looked at the Ninja courses down in St. George. The Ninja course that you are probably the size we're looking at is the one that's going in out in Eagle Mountain, from what I understand, it's the one out in Eagle Mountain. I went and actually saw that one. A couple of the council and some of the city staffs went and saw the one out in Eagle Mountain. So that we're kind of going, okay, this is what it appears. The one in St. George is a little smaller. The one out in Eagle Mountain seems to be that this you'll see a lot of different type of ages use it. Now, truthfully, when I saw it, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to go up, over, or through as I looked at it, but I'm not a Ninja person, so. But now we get to where we're at now. Now, the council voted 2 weeks ago to go ahead and with it, exactly where the Ninja course is going to be at, and to earmark that. And if there's enough funding, and what we're looking at funding-wise is we're looking on June 4th, we will now get through our budget, and we'll have impact fees. Ridgeview, which is over by the high school, is coming on faster. They're developing faster than what we anticipated. And with each of those homes, we're getting, how much is our impact fee? I'm trying to think, is it $3,500 or $3,900 for a park? But each time there's a new unit built over in Ridgeview or throughout Highland, we're collecting about $3,500 to go towards a park impact fee, which goes to build new parks. And so that's come on stronger over there at Ridgeview, which is also we're starting to see that we probably have the funding to move forward with the Ninja course. And that's probably what's raising some of the ire, is that Ninja course is now coming to fruition, and our plan is to have it in phase 2 if there's funding. And that's what the decision was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Now, council, I'll let you guys kind of chime in. I think
Yeah, let me just say a couple things. So a couple things we've done to mitigate things is we've increased the space from the residence fence on the west side and made a bigger area to plant trees. And we're trying to raise money to put in bigger trees and more of them as a buffer. And we also moved the Ninja course over from the original spot and made it farther east. So I think we've done a couple things to try to mitigate.
So what Councilmember Smith's mentioning is it was almost directly to the more vertical, the rich.
Behind the little park maintenance building.
Yeah, behind that little maintenance building, and we've moved it a little bit more on an angle so we could put in more trees to try to, buffer that. There had been some conversation about trying to move it between the two pavilions, but once we did that, there were some utility lines that we have there currently in place that would have to be removed, plus it made the soccer field much smaller. And so the council 2 weeks ago voted to have it go in this location where we're seeing in the drawing up there at this time. As Scott had mentioned, both Councilmember Scott Smith and Doug Courtney and myself, we knocked the 20 homes all down through here. One, to listen what their concerns were, to see what concerns they're having at the park, but also to talk about the options of trees to try to help buffer in this area. Because we recognize if we can get some trees, that might help in buffering. As I've talked with the foundation, we've had one donor that does not live by the park that has donated $5,000. We don't have any other donors at this time from what we've seen from the foundation. So so there have been some money come in for the trees, but it does not appear that we've seen any come in from the area around. Now, we've had some interested donors, and there's been some in that area that already have been donating towards the park, not necessarily just for the trees.
So I just checked, there's actually $7,000 that's come in. So that's enough to buy, is that 14
trees.
14 good-sized trees to put in there.
So, council, any others want to?
Yeah, I'll just give a little background also, since I've been on the committee along with Brittany on designing this park for the last 4 years. So actually the Ninja course was a suggestion from a representative of your neighborhood that was on the committee with us. And essentially our purpose and our goal and mission as we looked at this park and designed it was we wanted this park to be for the entire family, that adults could enjoy, toddlers could enjoy, teenagers could enjoy, every single age group. So when you go on a Sunday, you don't have your teenager being bored or your toddler being bored because there is an amenity for every single person. And that was the suggestion of the Ninja Warrior course, was to be able to have an amenity there that teenagers could be able to hang out on and play with their dad, with their mom, with an adult figure as well, and to be able to enjoy that as a family together. So this has been mentioned approximately at least 10 times in the minutes of the meetings. We've brought it up in community open houses, Highland Fling, when we went over the park plans as well, always pointed out that this would be a Ninja Warrior course there. And so it was one of those things that we are really doing and cognizant as a council that we know a big, huge issue in our city is mental health of our youth. And if we can do anything possible to get our youth outside and playing and being children instead of being on their phones, then that is something that we wanted to do. And that was really what was the suggestion of our representative that was from your neighborhood that wanted that in there. And so for the past 4 years, we've been planning on it. It's been in there. Plan A was actually a maintenance building right there. And the neighbors along there, after they bought their lot, that was part of the plan. When they bought their lot, that there would be a maintenance building there. And that is something that we can still put back on the plan if this is something that is not wanted here and there wants blockage. We are discussing that as well. Right now we have it by the community center. It's costing us a lot of money to move it over there. So we have discussed that as well, of looking at maybe possible areas to put that as well, to use that area for maintenance, because it would help a lot to be able to maintain this park and the parks in our city as well.
I think what Kim is mentioning, the maintenance building, if you see on here on the drawing, you can see with the Ninja Course, the maintenance building, one reason why you'd want to put a maintenance building here in the park is, one, this is a large park to maintain. And if you have your maintenance there, then they're there every day and they can pay more attention to the park. The other thing is one of the concerns we have is when we get our lawnmowers out on the busy roads, some of our drivable, it's hard because they always have to be transporting their different mowing equipment, or they have to be driving down the busier roads. And so there is some sensibility about, if you can put your maintenance building here, it will also alleviate having to move your equipment as much. Now with that, we listened to residents, the 4 years ago and moved the maintenance building, but as the comments are coming in, there can be some sensibility. If we put the maintenance building back over in this area, it can add as a buffer. If everyone's saying, hey, we're starting to see so much, we're worried about the noise or things, a maintenance building up over in that corner would help with a number of the things. It would help with the noise because there would be a building in between. It'd help with the maintenance of the park. One of the things, we have to store different things if we have different events. Now, we don't know, the maintenance building, we might still have to have something over by the baseball diamond for some of the baseball stuff or for things like going. The maintenance building might still be an option to help with buffering. Now, with that, is a transparency. Our workers will show up at 6:45 in the morning. It's a maintenance building where they have lawnmowers. They're going to have to start the lawnmowers. They're going to have to get them going and things to go out from that area. So it's not like there wouldn't be noise. But that, in our first original plan, if everyone's worried about the plan, the original plan showed the maintenance building up over in that northwest corner.
Right, and it would have been the large maintenance building. I think we need to kind of define, this is a little maintenance building. I mean,
Oh, the
Andy
one that's
can,
going in, it would be, I think, Andy, was it 6,500 to 7,000 square feet is what the maintenance building. It's to move our entire maintenance department, not our parks maintenance, out from the mouth of the canyon closer to our parks. Most of our parks are along the 10-400 or in the area of the heart of the city. We only have one park up there by our park maintenance building being the.
right. But I think we just need to define, this is a little maintenance shed almost compared to the big maintenance building behind the
Oh, I
community
agree.
center. Because the original big maintenance building was going here, but we moved it over to the community
We
center.
have, but I'm saying if there's
Yeah.
concerns about noise, that is one option, is to look at the maintenance building. It would be a buffer, it'd be about 30
Sure.
feet tall. It would buffer the noise for some, for some of the residents right there. Now, like I
But
said,
no-
you're gonna
But
say-
we're still talking about the small maintenance building,
at
right?
the
Yeah.
concept that's been approved has a small.
Small maintenance building,
Has
because
a
I think it's confusing. We have a big maintenance building that was moved from there to the community center, and this is the small one, just for kind of
I'm just
storage,
saying,
yeah.
as
Yeah.
comments, I'm going, that's an
Sure.
option to look at. So-
Yeah, from my perspective, if, if this is so new to the neighbors and it's really not wanted, going back to the original plan seems to make a lot of sense. Putting a maintenance building there, and it gives you the addition of the sound buffer and everything else. But I'm not there yet. I'm
Yeah.
not saying recommending that. I'm just saying we need to look at it as an option.
But they didn't want the big maintenance
Why
building. In fact, they took it to court. So I'm not sure we want to put the big maintenance building there. I think we have to be careful.
Would it even fit?
One other
deal.
thing, I know we were talking about park hours and curfew, and that's really why we're here tonight. We want to make sure that this park is not really, bothering you guys at night. We want to make sure teenagers aren't there at night. And so there is a curfew that we are passing tonight to make sure it's at 10 p.m. We have put a live camera there that's established there right now to be able to capture any vandalism there. I haven't heard of vandalism going on, and we've talked to the chief, and maybe you can tell us if there's any type of vandalism. We've talked to our rec people about rocks, and they haven't seen anything there, but we would love to know if there is anything captured on the camera that we have there right now and what's being done. We've also talked to the police about doing drive-bys to make sure those kids are out and also discuss with Cedar Hills how they get the kids out at night as well, of saying, hey, 10 p.m. curfew, please come by, say, kids, time to leave. We have live cameras, making sure to record everything, and then coming back 15 minutes later and being like, okay, everyone's gone. So that's a big main concern for us, is to really make sure that park is closed down. And that's something that we are actively doing right now. And it was one of those things, this is a brand new park. And so we had to make sure of what are the things that we need to do and work with the neighbors on that. And that's what we have already established and done and what is happening tonight. So we're on board with that, and we really want to make sure that's done. But if there's any vandalism that we haven't heard of, I'd love to know as well.
From the police or even from parks, Chief, are we hearing anything?
So
on-
we haven't had any vandalism.
Okay.
It would be substantial. When you say vandalism, it's mostly just kids tossing rocks onto that soft pads and things that could cause damage, but we're not aware of or made. I've been made aware of anything that's been substantial.
And I'm actually really happy about that and happy that our teenagers are being respectful. I know that Cedar Hills, within the first couple of months of their park being open, those zip lines were broken and swings were broken, and really, like, this has been pretty respected park, and the teenagers have been pretty good at taking care of it as of now. I mean, it hasn't been open for a long time, but we're beating Cedar Hills on the vandalism.
Well, and I know the council, when we talk about the Ninja Course, the Ninja Course to me is not only for teenagers. I think you will see adults go and use the Ninja Course. And Kim, what you mentioned, you might have some, if it be parents also with their kids over there interacting, which is,
It's actually not a playground equipment. It is classified as a workout equipment for adults.
Mayor? So I just wanted to say a couple of things. First off, when we started designing this park, we thought about a whole bunch of things. We thought about an equestrian center, we thought about a skate park, a mountain bike park. Kim, what else did we think about?
Splash pad, we thought
The
about, it
27
actually originally was a big baseball field with many baseball fields.
So we've gone through a lot of different iterations of this plan, and we've talked to different cities. We've done a ton of research, and we actually started talking about the Ninja Warrior course in July of 2021, and we've talked about it. I was searching the minutes, and we've talked about it 10 times between then and now. So nobody's trying to like force a ninja park on somebody who doesn't want it. Like, we're not trying to surprise anybody with a ninja course. One thing that's really hard for us on the council is it's hard to notify every resident when something is going to be voted on that they're going to have a concern about. So I just think that that's really tricky. So it's been talked about before, and clearly everybody hasn't heard about it, but there are other things at the park that weren't in the initial design either. The basketball court was not.
Correct.
Staff was really annoyed when we added that basketball court last minute.
I think the
The-
basketball court was added
Yeah.
almost before I think we had the Ninja Course before the basketball.
The
same day.
the futsal lines on the basketball court, those were new as well.
Electrical for food trucks, that was added back in 2021.
Yeah, the lights around the path. So it's been a plan. My only point is it's been a plan that's been constantly evolving. We're trying to get input. We want to do everything we can to mitigate concerns, which is why we're talking about cameras and lights and curfews and policing it. So we're not ignoring concerns, and we're not,
And more trees.
and more trees. We're not trying to sneak a Ninja Warrior course by anybody.
Well, and I think, one of the things, and I've mentioned this 2 weeks ago, is I think the council has to say, are we over-programming this park? Meaning, do we put in too much amenities, or are we putting the correct amenities in for the families? And I think that's, and that's something we have to really look at here. And the council has talked about that. This isn't just something that, the one thing I think about the Ninja Course, I think it has a different demographic than your baseball player possibly. I mean, yeah, I know some of the athletes there, but some of the kids I know that are parkour aren't playing baseball or football or soccer. It's a different element you're hitting. The other big thing about the park that we haven't mentioned that is a really neat, it's an all abilities. And so one of the things when we're talking all abilities, it's all abilities. And that Ninja Course brings about a different ability also. I mean, everyone thinks, well, no, that means someone that's in a wheelchair. Well, no, what about other abilities that they also want to use the park. We've had a lot now probably out of everything in the council, I've had more compliments about this park, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the residents, because we put a lot of money. We put $9 million towards this park. And so it's an expensive park. It's kind of it's the big, well, not acreage-wise, it's the biggest park in the city, but it's probably with what's going to be going on the park, one of the larger parks in the city. Our Beacon Hills Park's fairly large. We have our Highland Glen. Now, Highland Glen gets used a lot too, guys. I mean, that's the other thing. And there's some times down there at Highland Glen that it is full in Highland Glen. So we got some parks. Now, one thing we are anticipating is the park usage will probably slow down after the newness. And there's the new Peck Family Park in Lehigh opening up, which they're advertising is the biggest playground in all of Utah County. You know, and so we're hoping that will take a little bit of the pressure off the park and things that way. But that's an unknown. We know that it's popular. We know that people are going there. I've been there several nights. By the way, I was there last night, and right at 10 o'clock, there were some kids there on the playground, and I just kind of said, hey, guys, it's 10. The park's going to be closed. And I was really surprised. I thought I'd still hear them, and I'm going, where'd they go? And they just kind of went on their way. Now, I understand that's not going to happen every night. I'm not naive that there's going to be kids that will still stay there or cause other things. But we do have cameras. Andy, I think we saw the cameras. How many cameras do we have there without that live view camera?
So without the live view camera, we have 16 camera views right now. The camera views that we have in place are observational. They aren't interactive, meaning they don't have the ability to sound a warning, so to speak, like the live camera does. But in place and functioning, we've got 16 cameras, and then we've got the live camera that we're just trying to get programmed. We were able to work with Live today and get the blue lights turned off. This is the first time we worked with Live. They have to set up some things for us, so I don't know whether it's going to happen tonight, but there will be an announcement at 10 p.m. that says park's now closed, and then we will get an announcement by about 10:15. And this is the part where we're trying to figure out when to set it, but we told them to start with 10:15 to 5 a.m. To set it for once it picks up motion in the park to have a trespassing, you're trespassing, you need to go home type of announcement. We'll hopefully record a custom one that says the park's now closed, you need to be going home, but initially it may be kind of a trespassing until we get it set up. But I don't know whether they'll have that all set up tonight, but the good news is for the residents that live close, at least the blue lights got turned off.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the blue lights, they were on last night, and they were bright.
Yeah.
You know, and so I drove past and go, oh, that's kind of bright. And the council, they all had a video last night, go, here's your blue lights. And there was all comments going, okay, those are pretty good. So, but those will be off tonight, the blue lights, but we do have the cameras on that live view. And like we mentioned, there should be some interactive with the live view stand that's there. But with that, is there anything else you guys would like to address to help as they come up to make comments and things that way?
Mayor, over here, can I just make a comment on the blue light? And this is going to be unpopular. And I did see pictures, and it is, I can imagine, very annoying. But our experience has been that blue light is a huge deterrent for those that want to violate the ordinance or, you know, the park hours. It just tells people, lets them know that people are watching. It gives a law enforcement presence, if you will. I'm not saying leave it on, I'm not saying turn it off, but it does help curb the activity around those
Good input.
just information.
And
I mean, it's
to
worth-
kind of
it's worth
follow up
listening
with
to.
Andy, we've been working with them for a few weeks to get it, and all of a sudden it showed up, unbeknownst to us a little bit. And so Andy and Josh went and learned about it today and how to operate it. Do you guys know, is it possible to dim the blue light or make it continuous instead of a flash or any kind of a settings like that?
Or even just have it on for the 15, 20 minutes after the park closes.
this
Or
10 to
even if we
10:30.
could shield one side of it. You always can shield the side that's flashing towards the resident.
I don't want to claim to be the live camera expert, but my understanding from today is that our options are to either have it on or off. Now, when the camera picks up motion, then it'll give an audible alert, hey, you need to leave the park, but then also the lights go on for a brief period. And that's what they call arming the camera. And so we can set the hours that we want the camera to be armed to do that. But as far as the strobe light, from what I understood today, you know, it's either you turn it on or you turn it off. They may have more functions, you know, once we get into it. Like I said, we met there today. We asked some questions, tried to get it set up, but I don't know whether we can turn it solid or dim it or any of those things. Now there is a red light that comes on when it's armed that's a little bit dimmer. That wasn't nearly as bright that he was showing us, so there may yet be some light that's a little bit of, hey, this device is on. But I don't know. We'll see tonight at 10.
We're leasing, that is leased, and that's.
Right now it's a 30-day free
trial.
demo to see if it works, and then the way you have to do it is you have the opportunity to pay essentially a month-to-month lease on it, or you can buy it and then pay the monthly fee to have it. You don't have the option to just buy it and have no fee, but they're letting us. You know, we're on the 30-day free trial, and let's try it, see if it's working, if it's effective, if everybody likes it, and it's a good thing. Then you know, the intention would be to keep it for the summer and see what we think. Try it out.
Sounds good.
So what I just heard, Kim, is this what you just heard? Is that city council field trip at 10 o'clock, so we need our meeting done by then, so we can go look at the blue light. Is that what you heard?
100% in the
perfect.
minutes.
And let's get moving on. If there's nothing else, we're going to now come back to our public comment time. And once again, if you'll just state your name, keep your comments to 3 minutes. We'll now come back. Hopefully that's giving you a good overview of the park to help you be able to correspond if you have some concerns to address, to help the council understand your concerns. So at this time, we'll open back up some public comment.
Hi there, my name's,
This is, thank you. This probably won't be about the park, will it?
well, it's going to start about the park briefly. So my name's Nate Woodbury, and I represent the world of Ninja Warrior because my boys compete. My 16-year-old competes at pro level now, and my 11-year-old, he had a world competition in March. So all gyms across the world did it, and he took 3rd place in the world.
Wow.
It's such a good sport. Just the community is amazing. We built lots of friends, but it's from a place of mental health, from a place of, that's a sport. Like you mentioned, there's different sports from baseball to soccer. My kids didn't get into those, but they got into ninja, and it's something that our family loves. And so to see something like that go in, it touched my heart because I want that sport to grow. And it is for teenagers and adults. Like, I've got a big belly, but I'm working on it because I want to be able to do ninja with my boys. So with that, I fully support it. I can understand wanting to move it. I support it wherever it goes, though. I feel like, and by the way, if lights get turned off on the ninja course, you can't do ninja. So that would solve the problem of ninja too late at night. Talking about the fence that we've been talking about for a year now, or beyond a year. We've been jumping back and forth with budgets and the concern of budgets, and I understand that. And I appreciate, I've had so much feedback from you in conversations, trying to find different solutions. The lower budgets that we've been looking at, the biggest worry that I have is we're not going to be able to maintain a theme wall. And, you know, the part of the reason that I moved to Highland is just the beauty of the city. I love the beauty of the city, and we drive up and down Alpine Highway, and it's a beautiful theme, you know. And there's other theme streets in Highland. It's not the only one, but I would call this one of the main arteries. I would love to see budgets like we put towards a park and like we put towards trails, to be able to put budget towards city beautification. So that's the biggest concern is, you know, as I go forward, whatever options we have to replace my fence, if everyone does something different, it changes. It changes the feel of that. And that's why we've had the code for other parts of the city. We need to maintain a theme wall, and it's such a blessing. It makes our city so much more beautiful. So I've got, you know, I've kind of led the committee, so I'm happy to answer any questions when we get to that point, but that's what I had to share today.
Thank you, Nate.
Hi guys, my name's Vanessa Moody. You guys have probably seen me back before when it was during the pickleball situation. So anyway, I just want to thank you guys. You guys have been awesome. I have voted for you guys. I've been grateful for you guys, and I was grateful for what Brittany said about the, she's telling us the information. I understand. I don't think you guys are trying to hide, anything from us. That's why I've appreciated you guys. So I just want to say that first of all, but this is my main concern, and I don't think that this has been looked at possibly. It's just an idea. So I'm mostly concerned about, and background, I'm a mountain bike coach. I'm all for activity. I'm all about mental health. Like, I love ninja courses. My son loves that ninja course down in Lehigh, like in the indoor and everything. But what about when they go there, they sign a waiver? And I'm just thinking, I understand that it's for all levels, like adults and little children, but a lot of those kids go unsupervised over to that park. And I'm concerned about, have we done any studies on Eagle Mountain if they've had massive injuries or ambulances? Can we look into that first before we give the green light on this? And then the other thing is, if it's right in somebody's backyard, they're, looking out their window doing dishes. As a mother, I'm just gonna be watching those kids like a hawk. I don't live right there, but I'm just thinking, putting myself in that position, you're putting people in, Good Samaritan, having to go and maybe rescue kids in a situation that could be potentially really stressful for the neighbors, with littles trying to get up on bigger things that they probably shouldn't be. So I want that to be like heard, and maybe you guys can discuss that before you, head in there. And then also just like, I don't know, yeah, I think those are my thoughts right now. I'm sure I had others, but just wanted to thank you guys. I think we've got some neighbors concerned about the amphitheater, and they've had some really good ideas about how, like, some of them have lived by other amphitheaters in the past, and some logistics. So I think it would be good to hear them out as well on that. So anyway, thanks.
Steve Hogan, thanks for giving me a couple of minutes. How many are aware of the fence we're talking about, the city-owned fence that goes along the highway there, the wood fence? You know what we're talking about? Okay. Just, sorry, a bit of a trick question. Apparently it's not, we found out it's not city-owned. So, couple of quick stories, couple of quick questions. I work in Salt Lake, and talking to a friend, apparently he comes down to play golf a lot. And when I was describing where I live, he said, oh, yeah, I know exactly where that is. And he says, by the way, when are they going to do something about that fence? I said, funny you ask. And then we got into the story about, what's happening there. So I tell you that just to say it's not just us that notices that. That's people from all over that come in this area a lot. It gets worse, of course, by the day. We have a few neighbors that are holding their piece of the fence up by a few nails or a little extra support. And the safety is continuing to be a concern, a growing concern with the increased traffic. On the way over here, like a lot of people, I got rerouted because of a significant accident up here on the corner, unfortunately. And I think we're going to see more and more of that with the increased traffic and increased building in the area. The question is the requirement still a theme wall?
That will be an agenda item later
Okay.
tonight, and then we'll
Okay.
give good direction.
We'll get to that. And something else to consider, I don't know if you have a question, you can answer this later. There was talk or discussion a few months ago about I don't know what it was called, an extended area that's going to be a bike path closer to the property line on the east side of the highway there. I don't know if there's more discussion or if there's a timeline for that. Is there a possibility of matching funds up to 50% that would incentivize people to do something with that fence? Maybe that's an option. And also, well, we'll stop there. But let me just say, it's been about 2 years, because I moved in just about 2 years ago, and in my first couple of weeks, we began talking about it. So I do appreciate the many, many discussions we've had here in this meeting. I've had Councilman Courtney come to my home and others call, and we've had conversations on the phone.
And I sincerely, despite sometimes our differences on this, I appreciate your efforts in a difficult situation. But I implore you and ask you to please, please consider all of these things that we've mentioned over the last 2 years, including safety, including the beautification of the city, and the justice, I'll use that word, of the last 25 years. Thank you.
Steve, you know, so it's item number 4A tonight, the Alpine fence.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Brad Weber. Want to thank you for your service. And I'm standing today to urge the council to pause its plans to add other amenities at the park. And I know you guys don't want to hear that, but I think the city needs to take a minute and let this park breathe and study the impact that these additions are going to have on an already busy park. As of this weekend, the park was already getting very close to creating a nuisance to its neighbors, as defined by Utah law and Highland city ordinances, because the volume of noise emanating from the park to the properties on its western boundary, including my own. So I want to be on the record tonight. My neighbors and I were tracking decibel levels at our property boundaries. I have a handout that I'll show you. We'll provide you with the data. I think this is an issue the city has not been aware of and not been cognizant of. This past weekend, we as a group had to call the police both on Friday and Saturday night because people in the park were there past 11 o'clock. The volume levels exceeded approved levels per city code, Title 8.16.100. And cities are supposed to abate nuisances and not create them. Certainly, my neighbors and I, we will do our part. We will plant trees, we will install hedges, we will put in cameras, noise monitors, and other surveillance systems, but the city needs to do its part and conduct the necessary studies before moving forward. I urge you to take I urge you to take Councilmember Courtney's recommendation as stated at the last meeting and allow for the park to settle in after the baseball fields, soccer fields, and the walking paths are installed. I think this wait and see approach will allow the city to collect data from Highland residents, explore options to mitigate issues like noise, parking, overcrowding, and there's vandalism. You may not know about it, but it's there, and I'm sure there's people here that will talk about it. Now is time to get a hold of these issues before the park is done. As a steward of the public trust, it would be irresponsible to move forward adding amenities to the park when the city has no way of knowing how the addition of soccer fields and baseball facilities will exacerbate existing issues. We all expect the park use to taper over time, but that's just an expectation. We will only know with the passage of time. I urge the city to be prudent, take a wait-and-see approach before approving the funds for the Ninja Course and collect real data from citizens. For example, we haven't even had a summer in this park yet. Residents may prefer water features or a snack shack or something else besides a Ninja Course. But if you do everything now, the city will lose flexibility. And finally, I request that the city reconsider its decision about the location of the Ninja Course. I'm going to hand you guys a handout that has these noise numbers and also showing that the cities that you relied upon for your decision, Eagle Mountain and Washington, none of those Ninja Courses abut residential. So I'll pass you guys a map of that, and I urge you to reconsider. Mayor, may I approach with these?
Yeah, just so you know, anything you give us will now become public record.
Yeah, that's great.
Hi, I'm Amy Jones, and I've also been here before. First, I want to say thank you sincerely for the effort that you're making with security cameras, with lighting, and taking those issues seriously. I really appreciate that. Just some additional data. I was at an art dye, at a park at Art Dye, at a soccer game at Art Dye Park on the far south fields. Over there, there were two kindergarten baseball games and 2 kindergarten soccer games, teams of 7 to 8 kids. And so we're talking about putting in these fields, and they will be in, that have, they're full size, so they'll have teams for U15 playing. They will have a minimum of 14 to 16 players. And so I just kind of did like a ratio comparison of how many cars we could expect. At the game that I was at Art Dye Park, there were 96 cars for those kindergarten games, and they're far away, so there wasn't conflict with other games. Those for sure were there for those games. So if there was that same ratio of cars per player, there would be 144 games during game time. And I took that in the very middle of the game. So my kids play soccer with surf. They're required to be to games 45 minutes before game time at least to warm up. So if you have 144 cars parked there for people that are there to spectate, plus you have cars that are coming to bring children to games in order for them to warm up, there's going to be parking issues. So I think that those need to settle, and we need to see what those truly are before we add in more amenities to the park. And then I also did some research on amphitheaters. I looked at Sandy, Red Butte Garden, Murray Park Amphitheater, Sundance, Draper Amphitheater, Sarah Theater, and Lehigh, and also the AF Amphitheater. In all of those amphitheaters, the sound is not directed at homes, not in one single one of them. And so I think that you should look at what other cities are doing, how they're being considerate to neighbors, reevaluate whether this is truly a good thing for the citizens of Highland and if this is the right location. I think an amphitheater is a fantastic use of funds. I love arts. I think that the location is inappropriate. Also, the American Fork Amphitheater, most of these they have seating on a hill, which is perfect for visibility. It also helps with sound. And that amphitheater was just the one that I found. It's rented 19 out of 31 days in July for different events. So if you combine that with soccer games and baseball games and a ninja park and the playground, we're going to have serious overcrowding issues. This park is totally being overprogrammed, and I just think we need to pause and see how things shake out this summer before we add any more.
My name is Barry Zundel, and I just wanted to get up and just echo what's been said about overprogramming the park. We love all the stuff that's going in, and our kids will love all those kinds of things. But we live on 104th, like on the corner right behind the Strasburg Church. And just the amount of traffic that comes along there, especially that four corners right there, that stop sign with the schools and everything like that. The question that I would ask the city is, what is the true purpose of the park? Is it to serve the city of Highland, or is it to be a destination where cities from all around are crowding into it, right? With soccer games, baseball games, football, all this stuff that goes on, are we trying to bring more people into the city and crowd and create, parking along the streets, all of those kinds of things? All the amenities are going to be great. They would be great. But I would assume, or I would hope that the city kind of takes a pause, like everybody else has been saying, and says, and looks at it and says, what should we do? And let's see how things pan out before we try to pack everything in. It's really hard to remove amenities and keep people from coming in than it is to just slowly build that if necessary. So that was my only comment, but thank you for all you're doing to keep the city the way it is. Thanks.
My name is Cherie Daly. I've only lived here 3 years, so I don't think you guys are trying to hide anything. I'm just trying to catch up from moving in. Where I previously lived, it was next to Kuahara Farms in Draper, and they just had a little market where you could go and buy fresh fruits and vegetables. Eventually, they expanded and they opened up a thriller park that was, I don't know, probably just 2 acres big. Wasn't very large. It drew so many people from Salt Lake County, Utah County. People from Tooele came. It inundated our neighborhoods with parking, and also people from outside of our city that we did not know. Theft increased dramatically. 3 cars were stolen out of our neighborhood in their garages after it opened. I do have a concern of what Barry said. I add my agreement with him that what is the purpose? Is it to pull people from other cities, or are we building this for our neighborhood and our community? I'd also want to say that with the neighbors that moved in here originally, they thought that it was slated for a maintenance building. And if I had purchased a property expecting that, and then it got replaced with obstructions and noise. It would be really frustrating. And I understand that it's $350,000 for the Ninja course. I'm wondering if that was donated. I don't know if that was required to use on the Ninja course. Why can't some of that money be built to add more trees and a better sound barrier and more privacy for those neighbors? One of the reasons that I love Highland is because of my neighbors, and I don't want them to leave. And I think this could be a sticking point for some of them, and I don't want them to go.
Hi, my name is Stephen Dowdle. First, I just wanted to thank, I saw Andy today. I went over to the live view camera and requested that the blue lights be turned off. I almost emailed you all videos from inside of our house last night. It was as if squad cars were sitting in our backyard the entire night. And that was with all the blinds and all the covering shut. If you like videos, I'm happy to email them to you. It was very obtrusive, felt like a form of harassment. It was not good. So the lighting, not desired. So thank you for turning it off. I hope it stays off. I'm happy that the cameras are there, and hopefully there's some assistance from those cameras in the audible messages. Additionally, I would hope to just add to what was already said by saying that I agree. I fear that that park is being over-programmed and that the parking is going to become a nuisance to the neighborhood because there's so many activities going to be available at the park. We already are at near capacity and the park's not even halfway finished. So definitely a concern of mine, of our neighbors, and I would implore the city to wait, take some time, see what the city truly needs and what the park usage is really like. Yeah, and I realize the funding you say has been found. I feel as a citizen, I hear we found funding for this, but we still need money for our trees. There's some confusion there as a citizen. It's like, we don't care that you have a problem with the sound, but hey, we found for what we want to build, so you deal with that and we'll deal with this. It doesn't feel fair. I know originally the idea of a Ninja course was about half the price of what you've now determined that you'd rather have. So obviously some additional funds are potentially found. Additionally, I would suggest that the stage area that you've kind of designated could be potentially used for a Ninja course. If an amphitheater isn't really a great use of the park, perhaps, and the Ninja course really is wanted, then maybe that's a better location for the Ninja course. Or if there really is funding for the Ninja course, I'm sure there's another park in the city that would be a great destination to kind of spread out the people going from just one park, one location, letting them enjoy the city as a whole. That's it. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Cody Dingus. I'm here kind of echoing what the neighbors said. There's 2 points that I wanted to make. As a graduate of the University of Utah Architecture program, the first thing that we learned in landscape architecture is that trees do not block sound. They make a horrible sound barrier. And so as we're talking about raising money for trees, please consider that that's not going to help with the sound. It may help with the view, but also trees only have leaves for 6 months out of the year, and it takes years for them to grow and mature. The other point that I would like to make is this Ninja Park, I think, like my neighbors, we feel like it's over-programming the park. How many times do you drive by Heritage Park and see nobody there? It's not being used. There's plenty of space there. Could we not, perhaps, if the city seems like they need to have this Ninja Park somewhere, could we have it there where there's additional space? There's no residents around it. It's surrounded by main thoroughfares, the seminary building, and junior high school, just to get the flow of traffic a little spread out rather than all in one location. So that's my recommendations. Thank you. And we do appreciate the work that's been done for the sound or the late nights. Just so you're aware, us neighbors are keeping track of how many times we have to call the cops and logging those. In the past 7 days, we've called 5 times 11:41 p.m., 10:40 p.m., 11:23 p.m., 12:15 a.m., 11:05, and this is in the same day. We had to call 11:05 and then 12:07. So it's definitely a nuisance, and we need to take care of that. So we appreciate what's being done. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hillary Gardner, live in the same neighborhood, just kind of want to echo what's been said. Just have some serious concerns about putting too many things in this one location in this park. I like the idea of looking into Highland Heritage for the amphitheater, because Highland Fling Days, we already used that there, or maybe even Mitchell Hollow. So just kind of want to echo, I think it's important to listen to all these concerns, they're very valid. And then also just with the traffic and how it's increased a lot. Just this is a little bit of a separate thing, but I'm wondering. I talked to Brittany about this; she knows. So I live on Yorkshire, and I know you guys have. I've talked to you about this before about speed bumps or a speed table. We had 2 near accidents right in front of my house just like a couple weeks ago. One was Carly's little boy, and she and my husband both jumped out and were waving their arms in front of a car. And so I'm very adamant I was just so shaken up about it after, and just was like to my kids, you cannot play in the front yard anymore. Like, we are playing in the fenced backyard. So it's kind of sad that it has to be that way, but because the way my lot is and the fence, and it's a blind corner. The other one was me almost hitting some cute little girls coming around on motorized scooters that were in the road and not on the sidewalk. And I wasn't even going fast, but anyway, it scared me. So I would love to consider speed bumps or speed tables. And just with the park and the increased traffic, it's like people still park on that road that's in between Mountain Ridge and the park. And it's scary, and you almost hit, you don't know if a kid's just gonna come out, but if the park is really full, they're gonna start parking in our neighborhood and just kind of create a bigger problem with what I'm already dealing with. So anyways, I wanted to ask, I've seen a new temporary speed bump, speed table on Canal, 2 of them actually, and I'm like, ooh, what's this? Ooh, I want one of these in my neighborhood. What is this? Yes. So is that a temporary thing, or is that you're just like studying it? And okay, I fully support that. And I mean, I even asked Brittany, like, I'm looking at Amazon at my own speed bumps, and is that okay? Because I could rally my neighbors and we could raise funds. I would love to consider that seriously. So thanks.
Since speed bumps brought up, we've had over 1,000 comments. You can go on the Highland City website and give us comments on your speed bump. We've had over 1,000 comments, and so that will be revealed at another time.
And just, Hillary, there's a thing called a traffic toolbox, and so come to the city and submit your claim for what you want, and then we can go from there.
What coming up on traffic, what we've put together is a toolbox that residents can come and submit, and then we will look and we apply what we've had the toolbox saying, hey, this is what it is. The speed bumps you're seeing on Canal is part of that toolbox. We're saying, okay, that's one of our tools we can use. They happen to be temporary. We bought temporary so we can get feedback on it. Okay, other public comments?
Hello, I'm James Thomas. I'm a resident not too far from the park. I visited it a couple of times with my children. Appreciate all the work that you guys have put into putting that in. I know it's been a long time, and my ask would be for you to just simply let it be what it is, what it's planned with the 2 soccer fields, the baseball field. I think it would be a perfect fit for Highland. What I've noticed, and I wanted to wasn't planning on speaking, but figured I'd at least give my 2 children's experience being down there. They learned a lot. 9-year-old and 5-year-old, 2 little boys come home, talk to me about what they've learned as they've climbed through the different structures and the different vandalism that they've seen. So there is some vandalism, even though it may be small, but talking about having to explain what philandering is with my 2 little boys as we've gone through. And so I think the newness of the park has created a lot of interest from outside people, and I think that will die down over time. My simple ask would be, leave it what it is, because you guys have done an amazing thing. It is a beautiful park. I don't know that we need to over-engineer and continue to do more than what's already there. On the speed bump issue, Canal Boulevard, no thank you, but residential areas where there are children, thank you. And that's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
We're now starting to add the speed bump in.
Hi, my name is April Slade. I want to reiterate what everyone said, the thanks, as well as the, really all we're asking for is time to let the park kind of settle down and kind of see how it plays out. We know, I mean, today's the first day of it really hitting, I think, tonight. We'll see what happens. But I really feel like, as I've tried to understand, and I'm pretty new to municipal things, but I've tried to understand, this is a really complex, multifaceted problem. It involves money, funding, neighbors, sociality with kids, road maintenance, trail maintenance, just all the things that this money can be used for. It's so multifaceted. So I think it would be really great if we could just sit for a minute and think and see how it plays out. Also, you mentioned that the cameras are a trial. One thing that I picked up, the last meeting I was at was in the middle of April, and there was a lot of discussion about getting funding for police and like their salaries and upping their salaries, and that really stood out to me. I'm really curious. So we're on this trial right now for this camera, and the camera's a great idea. It's a great way to do it, except, well, I would love to show you the video of the blue light, but but I'm wondering, I have a question. What happens if the camera is not a good idea? What if we can't mitigate the light and it doesn't work out? My question is, I don't want to be bugging the police all the time, and that's what I've been told to do, so it's fine. I'll call and call and call and call. My question is, if it doesn't work out and we do end up going to the police, how many police are there, and how does that work? Are there enough police to spend time on these little nuisance issues as opposed to the bigger issues that are happening in the city? So that was one of the questions I wanted to get answered.
Hi, my name's Chase Jones. I live next to the park. Echo appreciation for what you're doing and the service that you're rendering. I specifically want to agree with Brad Weber's comments and my wife's comments, Amy Jones. I love the data that's brought forward. I see the park as a product, and any product that we build, we need to know what it's supposed to do. I think Barry said it really well. Are we trying to create something that draws everybody in Utah County, or just something that we can all enjoy in Highland? One of the things I love is open spaces, and I think the park, I think James said it well, the park is beautiful how it is right now. Maybe we could use amenities later on, but until we gather data to determine what the product needs to improve, it's the same with manufacturing and software development. You have to test and learn. And right now we've created a phase where we can test and see what happens and then gather data. So I don't think it's wise to put a ninja course in or an amphitheater or anything else until we've tested and learned, and then we can move forward with good data and make good decisions. I have an amazing product. It started amazing, but keep it amazing. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brad Eldridge. I've lived in Highland for 21 years. I don't, where most people have spoken, I don't live in that area. I'm about a half a mile between Mountain Ridge and the park. And so I don't hear the noise, and very sympathetic to what they're going through, but that's not really my concern. These are just kind of anecdotal illustrations or concerns, but first of all, and I should have started with this, this is the first meeting I've ever been to. I am so, and I mean this genuinely, I'm grateful to all of you. It is so evident to me that you guys have put a lot of time and you have looked at every benefit and negative consequence to the things going into that park. And I feel it. I see it. It surprises me because I didn't actually believe that local government worked that way. And I felt that and I've seen that, and I'm truly grateful to you. That being said, I drive down past Mountain Ridge 2-3 times a week. And when they have their soccer games there and their baseball games there, the traffic that is there scares me to death. People are parked in fire zones. They don't care. They're parked on both sides of the street. I slow down, and I'm not kidding you, I slow down to 10 miles an hour on a 25-mile-an-hour road because I'm so scared that some little kid's going to run out and I'm going to mow him down with my truck. And I'm sitting here, as I was late to this meeting, and I intentionally, I love the park, by the way. I have two of my kids have grandkids. One lives in Linden, and one lives in American Fork, very South American Fork. And I told them about this park, and they came and fell in love with it. And this was about 3 weeks ago. I better go quick. Anyway, they called, and they said, hey, we're going to do something over at such and such a park. And I said, what park is that? And they said, oh, it's the one over here. And they were referring to this park. And so this idea that it's just for the residents is not, I don't believe is true. I think people will come to this. So my biggest concern is I drove by tonight. We don't have we don't have either one of the soccer fields in. We don't have the baseball diamond in yet. We don't have, I didn't know about an amphitheater, but we don't have the, anyway, it was about 65 to 70% full, the parking lot, and that's just with phase one. So I'm very concerned about the impact that parking will have, and it's going to have to spill out into the roads and into the neighborhoods, and I don't think that's a great idea. Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to come up?
Good evening. My name is Brandon Bates. I would like to voice objection to the Ninja Warrior course, not to move it, but to scrap it altogether. Or at the very least, I'd like to see some compelling evidence that the unsupervised children who frequent the park will not find it the irresistible, if dangerous, temptation that it's sure to be. I was reviewing some statistics for injury rates among Ninja Warrior course participants. The best ones that I've recently seen suggest that per hour used among those that are familiar with ninja courses, are athletes and are trained in using them, have a concussion incidence 3.6 times that of those who are playing high school football. Now, these are adults. These are not unsupervised little children that invariably will find themselves playing on the park and using it for a purpose for which it was not intended. The private gyms in the area, they do have some programs where they allow children to come and participate. There are 3 best practices that they have implemented. They have a children-only time, so no adults allowed in the course at the same time. They require close adult supervision, and they also have spacing requirements, meaning that there is a maximum density of people on the course that they allow at any particular point in time. Barring our hiring a full-time supervisor to monitor the course, I do not see how we can prevent unsupervised children from injuring themselves. It's difficult for me to see how we can do that. Relatedly, the ninja course, I think, and I guess the city attorney is not here, but will confirm that case law suggests at least that when cities have a hazard that is known and that provides foreseeable injuries, the city cannot claim sovereign immunity. The current cap for lawsuit per person per incident is $827,000. Given the likely rate of life-changing injuries that we may see, I think that that is a risk and a liability that I am not willing as a city to accept. And I suspect that if the residents at large were made aware of it, would also find an unacceptable liability on board. Finally, I'll echo the sentiment that we need to let the park breathe. This is a city council. You are not Carnival Cruise directors. We do not need to pack in as much as we possibly can within a limited space. Let's enjoy the open space. Let's figure out what the parking situation is. The graffiti situation, I do not want my children finding penises and expletives and other depictions of genitalia that they come home and mimic to me and ask me what it's for. So I will end there. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Seeing no one else, we'll now close this time for our public comments. And we'll now move on to our item number 2. Item number 2 is our consent items, which is 2A. Is there anyone like to pull that or discussion? Or
Yeah, I'd like to pull that from the consent.
Okay. Is everyone okay with? So we'll have that pulled, or some discussion you'd like to have on that, Doug?
Yeah, I provided a document to everybody that when talking about salaries on the April 30th minutes, the second text paragraph on page 9 reads, increases are performance related and not all employees will receive a 5% increase. And the 5% was actually dealing with the market increase. So I would like to change that to increases are related to median market salaries and not all employees will receive a 5% increase.
So what you're stating, though, back at the meeting, did we state to the median market salaries, or you're saying add that in so it's more clear?
We said that it was that we were targeting a 50%. I don't think the word median was used, but definitionally. So if
is everyone amenable for the change here?
Yeah, I'll second that.
In that case, I move that the Highland City Council amend the minutes from April 30th, 2024 to strike the text performance related and replace it with the text related to median market salaries in the second text paragraph on page 9 of the agenda packet, and that the Highland City Council adopt the amended minutes from April 30th, 2024 and the minutes from April 29th, 2024.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Doug, second by Scott. Any other discussion on our minute? We're ready for a vote.
And I will vote by voice. I'm not in yet.
Just wait 1 second for everyone to get theirs up there then. Brittany, are you able to get in? Oh, okay. Doug, what would be your vote?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. The meeting minutes passed 5-0, which we would have been surprised. Okay, we'll now move on to our expedited items, which is number 3A, which the ordinance is adjusting the park hours. This would be our city attorney, who is not here tonight. He is out ill, so that will now go to our city administrator, Erin Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're going to hear a lot from me tonight, Mayor and Council, because I'm putting on my city attorney / planner hat and my HR hat. So darn people's immune systems that don't always cooperate with city council calendars. So
I don't see any hats.
We gotta have you different hats that you put on.
There we go. I like that. Okay, so back on May 7th, just this last meeting, council and staff had a conversation about park hours. And at that time, we presented the idea, what if we amended it to be 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., so shortening it by an hour, but saying you can't do sport activities until 6 o'clock in the morning. Council was amenable to that, and so that's what this item is in front of you tonight. So just a reminder, current code says 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. For our parks, except for Highland Glen, which we do dusk to dawn on that park. So like I said, the proposed change in front of you is to shrink it down by an hour, 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. Again, not allowing Pickleball use, soccer practices, football practices to begin later or begin earlier than 6 o'clock, excuse me. Highland Glen would stay the same. We tend to have a lot of vandalism, speaking of which, down there after hours, or after dark, I should say. So dusk to dawn seems to work best at that park. This amendment would also change it so that you can't park at parks after 10:30. So give you a little bit of time to leave, and then you can't be there. As we've spoken with the police department about this idea, they emphasize the need for proper signage to be able to, for their officers to be able to enforce this and point to, hey, you shouldn't be here, right? We've signed it appropriately. I know there has been some conversations lately, including amongst the police department, of should we even make this more simple and just say 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock? And so we're not even allowing it 5 o'clock. The reason that we had 5 o'clock in there was actually to acknowledge the fact that we have dog walkers or just, runners or general trail users out and about before the 6 a.m. hour. But in talking with Rob this afternoon, we could make an adjustment to, okay, say the park is from 6 to 10, but trails are from 5 to 11, or whatever council would feel comfortable with there. In addition, we could just leave everything 6 to 10, but we would all have to acknowledge that we know people are going to be there before 6 o'clock, hopefully doing, like, just walking their dogs or things that we're, honestly, we would not be patrolling to try to catch them. Certainly it would be based on a nuisance type of a call to the police department. I don't know what else I have, Brooklyn. Okay. And then one other thing, after we settle on what you want the hours to be, I would love some direction on lights at the pickleball courts as well. To try and minimize impact, my leaning is to not turn them on until 7 o'clock in the morning, even though the parks rule could say 6 o'clock, that you could start that, just to not necessarily encourage it in the non-summer months when the lights aren't, well, the sun isn't up that early, I should say. And then I think I just have a proposed motion after this, don't I?
So, Kim, you're up as an early runner.
Well, I guess I just don't see a reason to say 6 a.m. versus 5 a.m. It's hard to say 6 a.m., but then just kind of ignore the runners, or there's just not going to be teenagers up at 5 a.m. that I know of. I don't know. I got teenagers, and they're definitely not up at 5 a.m. So I think that just really pertains to runners, and we really don't want to discourage them from not running or walking their dogs at 5 a.m. So I'm fine with the 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. I just love to know what Cedar Hills does, what time they turn on their lights for the pickleballs, or other courts turn on their, I know Art Dye Park, I feel like theirs are on pretty early, but they're not by.
I'll see if I can figure that out. And that
Sorry.
decision we don't have to make necessarily tonight.
We're talking the lights don't have to
Yeah.
necessarily be that. That could be administrative. I think the lights will be more of administrative.
But we just kind of wanted council to be on the same page with us as we did that, because we figured that might end up with some complaints. So,
I love 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. and definitely put signage there.
but then still not allow pickleball or practices until 6 o'clock.
Yep. Uh-huh.
So, Chief Williams, how hard, when we're talking 5 a.m. park opens, but you can't play any type of sports at the park, is that enforceable? And now, naturally, I don't know if have you had a lot of problems in the morning? I mean, maybe like we said, it's the teenagers aren't seem to, and we always think the teenagers are the problems. There might be others that are problems too. But
we haven't traditionally had problems in the morning, but Andy shared a photo with us earlier this week of individuals that went and set up their own lights on the pickleball court at 5 in the morning.
No.
Started playing.
yeah, the cameras caught them. They have these great big lights they've brought at 6 to 8 before.
Were they adults?
I do think the way that this ordinance has been crafted, specifically in 1A, really helps us address the problem. And I think that delineates between those activities that create noise versus those walkers, runners, joggers, or those that might be doing some type of fitness activity on the grass or on the paths that truly don't make a lot of noise. It's the pickleball, it's the playing on the equipment that makes that noise. So I think the way that it's drafted and crafted right now was well done. I think it's great language.
How are you when there's been calls? We had reports tonight. There's like over the weekend there maybe were five calls. Are you have the officers, I understand it depends on what their certain, their call load is at the time. Have they went to the park? Has it seemed that you've gotten the kids off or the kids coming back? What are you getting reported back?
So our experience is if the officers are available, which is the majority of the time, there are going to be those times when the officers might be on a different call, and it may be a delay that they respond, but they do respond to the park, and they do ask them individuals to remove themselves from the park. They've been compliant for the most part. We haven't had any resistance or pushback, but once you have one group exit, it's not long that a different group, or maybe some of the same group, return. And so we talked about having proper signage. That's going to help us enforce this, and it's going to be able to stick on the prosecution side when we get them into court, if we write citations, get to that point. Our plan is once the signage goes up, this has been a process for all of us. Once the signage goes up, we'll probably, like we have been the last couple of weeks, give some warnings, but then citations will soon be following after that. And once the word gets out that you're going to end up in court, usually that tampers down the activity. That's been our experience in other situations, with other parks or other places that we have these types of issues. So,
Scott, did you have a comment?
No, I'm just looking at you.
Okay.
I always have an opinion.
Yeah.
But I'm still thinking about it.
I do have one change that I would like to make to this. In 12.24.010 A1, D, it says no parking should be permitted in the parking lots for the city's parks, trails, or cemetery past 10:30 p.m. I would like to change that to between 10:30 p.m. and 5 a.m. I think that was the intent originally, and
I'll support that.
Okay. Any other discussion or input on park hours or things?
Well, I appreciate that also, because I mean, I'll be honest, I parked at Mitchell Park this morning at 5:15 a.m. I don't jog in the park, but that's where I meet friends to then go run the city. And so I do appreciate having parking available in the park at 5 a.m.
just the one observation that we're establishing different parking times than we have the park availability times for Highland Glen Park.
From dawn to dusk.
Right. I'm okay with that because I think we closed gates. And so that's not going to be an issue, but just that we're aware that we're making that disconnect in the code.
So, Chief Williams, is this the first time where it will be a Class C misdemeanor for the park, or has that always kind of been, in the past?
So the Class C misdemeanor comes into play if we have subsequent violations. The first violation is an infraction, and I think that's pretty standard across.
Any other input on this? I mean, we do have school getting out this next week, so I think it's a good time that we get this put together so we can try to help enforce. And I do think it's important where it says or cemetery, where it says, okay, you can't park, because I have noticed also at different times, especially so Kim is the early morning person. I kind of almost stay up late, so the city's being watched. She's up at 5 and I'm up till 2.
I jogged by your guys' park at 5:30 this morning.
I'm
No one was there.
As the police know, as they pulled me over, I think at 1:30, they're going, "What are you doing up?" I said, "I'm just coming home from work." And I really was. I work really late. It's just, it's quiet and I can get things done.
And then we had to do FSTs and make sure that you weren't intoxicated. I passed all those.
I get it. How come you don't test?
I kid.
How come you
They'll
don't
put
test
those in a minute, Steve.
Yeah. How come you don't test anyone at 5 a.m.? Why is it always a 1:30 guys?
Because they recognize the troublemakers.
They do look intoxicated. Stumbling out the door. I'll make a motion if we're ready.
Okay.
Let's make sure I get this right. I move that the City Council adopt the ordinance amending curfew enforcement and park hours and operations. And I just want to make sure that we have operation for all parks other than Highland Glen to 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. with sports activities not beginning earlier than 6 a.m. and parking from, was it 5 a.m. to 10:30 p.m.?
Till 10:30.
Yeah.
From 10:30 to 5 a.m.
5 a.m.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No parking.
10:30. Yeah.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Kim and a second by Scott. Any further discussion needed on this? If there is not, we'll now go ahead and go to vote. Okay, that passes 5-0. Now with since we're still on this item, we've had a lot of residents that showed up and kind of stated, I understand when it goes, hey, what's the answer to that? There's no actionable item, was not really even as a discussion item tonight on our agenda. That's something I think the council has taken in. And if you notice, the council's fairly sensitive and they've taken what has been said, and I'm sure there'll be some different conversations. Hey, is it over-programming? Do we want to pause? Do we feel comfortable moving forward? I'm sure there'll be some, and if they feel that there needs to be changes, then it will be put on the agenda later.
Yeah, the intention actually was for us to have a financial update conversation about the parks capital fund, and do we want to do more amenities in phase 2 at our next meeting on June 4th. So that was the intention at this point.
And since there was a lot that was talked about finances tonight, you need to understand that like when we sold the Spring Creek Park ground, it couldn't go anywhere else other than the park. Our park impact fees cannot go to roads or to anything else. That has to go to parks. So as we have different things happening, certain funds is restricted funds, and they have to specifically go to certain type of amenities in the city. Like when we charge you for the different fees, that they're an enterprise fund, they need to stay within those enterprise funds. So that's the park has certain funds that stay within that.
The ARPA money that we use, the $2.5 million we got from the federal government, there are certain stipulations, and one of them was that we could use it towards a park. Could we use it towards other amenities? No, we couldn't, because it didn't have to do with COVID related, but parks was one of those that getting outside and being healthy was considered to be something that could be used for that funding.
We used it for, okay, if it's an impact fee, it has to be for new improvements. It can't be like we're replacing a current playground. It can't be, so if we already have a current park put in, if we wanted to do a new dog park, if we wanted to put new pavilions in a park, we can't. I mean, so it has to be something that we're adding in. It's not replacing or maintenance on it. So that's what I'm saying, that it's just the governmental funds and how they come in. And Ridgeview with the 680 homes over there, they're coming in faster. And like I said, each time there's a home permit, we're getting $3,500. It's not saying, hey, but that's why you're saying, hey, how come also there's now funding opening up? We were estimating 42 building permits per year. We kind of thought, and I think we're over 120 so far this year. And we're going, hey, we thought 42 and we're at 120. And it's coming in faster than we thought. Now we recognize Ridgeview will also get developed out and things that way. But just it's some of the funding that we're trying to just kind of work through.
Can I make a comment, Mayor? I think when you're talking about future things on this park, I think it's very important that we carefully define amenities and terms. So, all of a sudden, the stage that we thought that we'd have there for maybe a Sunday night concert or the Fling or something, all of a sudden became an amphitheater.
Correct.
Now, in my mind, an amphitheater is much different than a stage.
I agree.
Okay, and then I think, and I kept bringing this up before, but originally the huge park maintenance building for the whole city was going on the west side. And there was and we voted to put it there at one point when I was on the council before, but then we moved it behind the city. But so we need to define terms carefully, because I think sometimes we leave confusion about exactly what we're talking about, because I'd never heard about amphitheater until the discussion tonight. Yeah, and it's always been a stage for the Fling or for occasional Sunday night thing, not an amphitheater. And because there's not room for an amphitheater, because the amphitheater.
I lived in Sandy with the Sandy Amphitheater, and that is a multi-million-dollar complex. It's nothing like a stage. It's going to cost us $50,000.
Yeah.
No, and
So I just think we need to be careful defining terms, because I think sometimes it sows confusion, which then results in more opposition and things when it's not what we're really doing. So, yeah.
I think that's good input.
Yeah.
Anything else on this item before we leave it? Okay, we'll now move on to our next expedited item. We have item number 3B, which is the ordinance on campaign finance regulations. We have some fun things we're doing.
Mayor and council, so the intent on this one, well, on all expedited items, I should say, is to be brief because we thought we kind of had general consensus on this in a previous meeting. Now, I understand there might be some changes on that, so I'm going to, I'll give you what I've got and let you guys discuss from there. So back on February 20th, this item keeps getting bumped. Back on February 20th, we do have a medical incident going on.
Whoa. You want me to go?
Ron, you need to have some fluid, need to drink some water. Yeah.
You're fine. Go ahead and take your time. Oh, sorry. All of us have had Charlie horses. And I
Drink some
understand these
fluid.
pains.
Don't worry, this may or may not be YouTube live right now.
You need someone to come and put some pressure on it? Okay. I don't know what that is.
You'd do it if you're taking a statin.
Okay, are we okay to?
Are you okay, Ron?
Yeah, we can go. I just keep standing here.
I'll continue and feel free to ask questions as we go. So the direction that that staff felt that we got from council is draft an ordinance essentially not allowing anyone who has an active application in front of the city council or has had one in the recent time frame to not allow them to donate to a council member's campaign or a mayoral campaign as well. Essentially, the drafted change that Rob's prepared requires candidates to adhere to the same conflict of interest standards. It doesn't allow donations for anyone who had an application within that year that we're doing the election. It does allow candidates, so if they got it, didn't understand that they weren't able to get it, they can either refund that or donate the money to the city. If they fail to do one of those things and they have multiple infractions, that would actually disqualify them based on this code that you have in front of you. There was a question about what do other cities do. So we've seen other cities, they increase the number of financial disclosures, and they have like some kind of maximum contribution limits for anonymous donations. And the state legislature actually prohibits donations while they're in session. But we didn't run across any cities who were doing something like what we talked about, but we do understand and understand why council might want to consider this. So happy to answer questions, or if you don't feel like you're ready for a motion on this one, to continue this conversation.
For me, okay, so let's kind of point out, this is not dealing, this gives some for instances, so we kind of understand where this would fall. If we had a resident that came in and let's assume they want to dispute a water connection, that would not fall underneath this ordinance because that's not a development or anything in that nature, correct? I'm just trying to think, this is more geared towards a development going on.
It's application specific, so like it's yes. I mean, not just anytime somebody or has a concern about what's going on in a park, something like that. It's an application. I think we specifically call it related to land use.
Subdivision, conditional use, municipal or development code amendment, rezone or zoning map amendment, or plan development or annexation. So it's really geared really heavy at the development side. It's not geared at the I want to say resident side. So if a resident's advocating for, let's say, a fence, the alpine fence, that does not fit. That wouldn't fit. This is going to be that's what I'm saying. But what instances would it affect residents?
The conditional use permit might.
If they're trying to build what? Now let me ask you, if we change, and we have a discussion tonight, we change the conditional use and it doesn't come before the elected body, but going to planning commission, then that conditional use would not, that might be something that should be exempted out because it doesn't come before the council. Does that make sense?
So let me just give a couple examples. I mean, in years past, and it's always been rumors, I mean, for an April Fool's joke, one time on the Patterson Longhorn property, someone put up a big sign and said, future home of Walmart.
It was
okay?
amazing.
And that went through the city. It was an April Fool's joke. But another time when the Pattersons came forth with some ideas for their property, everybody said Home Depot's coming. So if Home Depot or Walmart were really coming, which they're not, if they made a big contribution to somebody's campaign, so they kind of stacked the city council, that would be a problem, right? But if you've got some residents with some concerns,
So it's,
here
yeah,
and there, and they want to donate to a candidate that's interested in solving some of those things, it's not a big deal.
so
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so let's use, for instance, if you have, let's assume someone is talking about, and that's just the trail behind their house, either purchasing, removing, or building. Would that fit underneath this new thing? Because to me, that's not a changing an ordinance, it's not a development.
Say again your
If it-
example,
but
Mayor.
I'm just trying to think of situations where there's been campaign donations. Maybe there was a contemplation of building a trail behind someone's home, and they want to advocate, but that wouldn't fall underneath. To
The
me,
one
this
thing
is
I
geared
could
at
think is
developing
it's
developers.
code amendments would fall under this. So if somebody anybody can apply for a code amendment, a text amendment, right? You think, I'm remembering what do you call it? Golf court fencing, not court. The net fencing was a text amendment by an individual like a year ago or so, right? Where we started allowing net fencing in certain locations near golf courses. So that would be an individual who could not donate during that time frame, right? Because it was a municipal code text amendment, which Rob's drafted ordinance calls out. So there would be certain circumstances where residences, individuals, wouldn't be able to donate, but it's largely intended to be geared at big donor corporation
or
types.
big projects going on in the city. I think
Yes.
what and I don't know. I know there's some feelings, and I think we ought to just hear from everyone what some of the concerns are, so we make sure we have, if this does go forth, that we have good thought process on it.
I think I do have some concerns here, and I think at first I was like, yeah, that makes sense. You know, I don't want developers ruling the city. I don't want big corporations doing it. But for example, the Home Depot example you gave, it wouldn't be Home Depot. It would be Patterson Home that wouldn't be allowed to donate. Well, what happens if Patterson wants to donate as a resident? So there's so many complexities to that. And I think my other thing that I have an issue with, for example, the person that wants to put up a net for a golf course, okay, he can't donate because he wants to do that. But what if his neighbor, he wants to put up the net, but what if his neighbor is against it? Well, that person can donate in order to sway that council to be against him. And so it's a form of discrimination, whereas you can essentially discriminate against somebody who wants to make a change for the person that doesn't want to make a change, or a person that doesn't want to make a change for the one who does. So I always get a red flag when we compare other cities, and nobody else has this. And there are already certain regulations in place by the state. And then my second red flag is we're here discussing it, and there's lots of questions and still confusion of like, who does this apply to and who does it not? I know when I did my campaign, I'll be honest, I had people who asked to donate to my campaign, and they were for changing the alcohol ordinance. And I said no, because I don't want to be influenced either way. And so it was my decision alone on that to not accept any campaign donations in my completely, just because it was such a hot topic. But at the same time, I don't really think that anybody else should have to be able to make that decision of, you know, you can accept a donation from somebody who is against something, but not for somebody who's trying to change something. Does that make sense to you guys? I feel like, one, it's a form of discrimination, and two, when no other city has this, why are we trying to change it if we already have procedures in place?
There are other cities that have it, and I think it's Long Beach. I was just trying to Google it fast, but I don't have the time.
I do not want to do what
It's either
California
Long
does.
Beach- It's in Southern California, but good example or bad example, I won't go there. The bottom line is my intent and my interest in this is just the developers. It's not the broader issues that, because I think Kim brings up a great point, and your logic all the time bothers me, but it's always accurate.
I think from being in the state and on the legislative side, sometimes what I see is when there is a problem, and the legislators try to then create a solution to somebody's one problem, it creates 1,000 more problems. And so this is what I kind of see as one of those instances where we see something that's like, yes, I want to, I see a problem with that, I want to change it. I could see it creating a lot more problems. And that happens a lot on the state level, and then they have to go in and fix it, and then do another bill to fix that, and it's just this cascading plethora of bills.
I would like to continue this and have some more time. I would like to bring to the council other areas that I know are doing this kind of limitation and what restrictions they have, because I believe it's just for the broader issues of developers.
I'll second your motion to continue.
I do think that we need to narrow it down in the future, because based on the conversation that has happened here this evening, I don't believe this can stand constitutional scrutiny, because it needs to be able to withstand strict scrutiny, and we've already said that it is not as narrowly tailored as it could be.
So now let's give some direction to staff. So here we want to table this. What is it we'd like to have staff, or what is it? So you mentioned that you'd like to go and study other cities of what type of ordinance? Okay. So Ron, what you'd like to come back and see what they've done, because like you said, okay. Is there anything else that others would like to have input, to have looked at before it's been brought back? I think it's important. I think, Kim, you bring up going, hold it, if you can have someone that can't give because of the net, but you can have a person give who doesn't want the net, I think that's a concern. But is there ways to work through, if it be a monetary? I mean, I think there's some wording. We all know where this is kind of coming from, is when all of us in the politics, I think there has to go, are we allow it? The one is, you showed better judgment or great judgment, saying I'm not going to take the funding, versus what we're saying, are we allow that? I think this is the question. Do we want to let the candidate make that judgment call, or do we want to make the judgment call so the candidate can't do that?
Sometimes it's nice to have the candidate make that judgment call, because then people will make a judgment call of whether they should vote for him or not.
And related to that, my concern has been all along that we need better reporting, because it is entirely possible for something to happen close to the election to essentially reimburse a candidate. And nobody know about that until after.
Well,
the
and I
election
think there was one, I
happens.
thought that was one thing I didn't see in the bill, was I thought we were going to add another reporting time. Because one of the problems I do see is also, and it's, you go, okay, if you're elected official going, okay, I'm going to have, my financial deadline's October, I'm just going to say October 20th. I'm going to tell the person, don't donate till the 21st, because I'm doing it, but my next reporting is after the election. And so it's to me, that was some of the concern, is you didn't know who had, they waited, and okay, now you've got 2 weeks after the election, you didn't know who really donated. That was one concern I had, was maybe another reporting period. And I know we talked about that at one, but I don't know if that's something the council would like to have added in or considered.
I know that we, you're absolutely right. We talked about that, and as staff, we had concerns, honestly, fitting one more in. I mean, you have all run for election, and you know that they are a tedious thing that you have to do, and if you don't file them, you could potentially no longer be eligible. And so, honestly, staff has concerns about doing it, but if you would like to do it, we certainly will support that. Anything more you want to add on that, Stephanie?
No, I think you voiced my concerns, just that the financial disclosure statements are timely and there are penalties associated with them. So I don't want that to become an issue with the next election.
And I should say, Councilmember Campbell, you're absolutely right. I remember you talking to me about California was doing it. I think when Rob was doing his research, we tend to look at just Utah cities. Yeah,
Well,
no,
and
thank you.
And another concern, though, I have is in terms of the enforcement. We have a situation that somebody did not declare a big donation that they received. They sent out a flyer, and it was a city council position, and they didn't declare that it had been donated by a developer in a very hot issue at the time. And how do we enforce that when we have regulations in place and yet it's violated? What recourse do we have?
I believe that it was declared properly on part of the candidate.
But not as not as the developer.
The mailer that went out didn't indicate
That's
who
what I'm
paid
talking
for it.
about, is the mailer.
Right.
And the mailer is supposed to show that.
So as we're looking,
Absolutely.
that's something else needs to, if a developer sends a mailer, he needs to notice that it's him paying for it, sending it out. And I think that's where we had an issue. That mailer that hit did not notice who was the payer for that mailer that was advocating for Kent.
Exactly.
And I believe the Lieutenant Governor's office had a conversation with them about that.
Yeah, I was going to say my recollection is that's actually state code and not something we can enforce anyway. And we sent them a letter saying knock it off as well. So
Very
that
good.
was
Okay.
Okay, with that, now let's move on to our next expedited item going on.
So-
to-
Actually,
we're
can
gonna
we get an
bring this
official
back
We need,
motion?
for some more
Mr.
discussion.
Thank you.
Because I understand Kim's concerns, but I also understand Ron's concerns. And
Boy,
I think we have to be careful.
yeah.
Yeah.
Could we get a motion on that before we move on, Mayor?
No, I thought it was continued. Oh, I'm sorry.
Motion
we
to
need that-
continue.
We need to vote, no, we voted.
There
we
was
had-
a motion.
So Ron
we
made a
have
motion,
by
I
Ron,
seconded it.
Second by Scott to continue this. Yeah, we need to vote on it. Do you have a slide on that, or do I just need to do a voice on this? Oh, there it is.
And this is yes to continue.
Yes, this is for the
Yeah, we tried
continue.
to change our voting slides to be very benign. It's just whatever motion you're making about this item.
5 to, the continuance passed 5-0. We'll now move on to our next action item, which is number 3C, which is the school district reconfiguration interlocal board member appointment. The proposal is to have the city council to consider appointment of the city administrator, Aaron Wells, as a city representative to the board administering the interlocal agreement related to the creation of a new school district with Alpine, American Fork, Cedar Hills, Draper, and Lehigh. I will be covering that. So as we've gotten with some of the other cities, we recognize that we need to bring together and have kind of a board to help put together some of these interlocals. They're just to help bring the agreements together. They're not to vote on it. We're the voting block that will be doing it if we decide to put it on the ballot to move forward. But with that, we do have all this, I believe it's all the city administrators in those 5 cities. We need to say, yes, you can go, and now it says the word approval, the execution of an interlocal agreement. Now, so I have a question on this. It says the city council approves the execution of an interlocal agreement with,
It doesn't say that in this motion.
yeah.
I move that the city council approve the appointment of
Okay.
city administrator.
Sorry,
Aaron
this was the
Wells.
prior council direction. Go to the next slide. And this just summarizes what the mayor says. I'm not going to be making any decisions on this. I'm just going to help move it along to get it back to you to make the decision.
Yeah, the decision for the interlocal agreement, any voting to move it and put it on the ballot will be by all the councils.
I move that the city council approve the
Could I-
appointment. Oh,
Could I ask a quick question first? I'm unclear if we are appointing Erin this evening, or Kurt, if you have appointed her and we are confirming that appointment. Because I think the motion reads as if we are confirming an appointment.
I think it should be a confirming appointment, because that was.
confirm the
Yeah,
appointment?
confirm the appointment.
Okay, approve is fine with me as long as we're just confirming it, that we're not actually appointing her. Okay.
Okay. So I'll say, I move that the city council confirm the appointment of city administrator Aaron Wells as the school district creation board representative.
Mayor, I'd like to make amendment to the motion. I agree with the motion, but I'd like it to also read that we provide a suit of armor for Aaron Wells.
Are you okay with that change?
Yeah, yes, I approve that amendment.
Who funds the suit of armor?
The person that made the amendment?
I'll second Kim's motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Kim, second by Doug. Any further discussion? If not, let's go ahead and. That is 5-0. Okay, we now move on to our discussion items at almost 9 o'clock. We have down the Alpine fence, it's item number 4A, which is the Alpine Highway Fence Replacement Program. This was also to be Rob Patterson, but this will be Aaron Wells.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so Mayor and Council, you have 3 options before you that staff has prepared. By no ways are these meaning to be definitive. You have to choose X, Y, or Z. It was just an option. We came up with a high, medium, low to get the discussion going. And so those were in your packet. They have been for the past couple meetings, so I won't go into them in detail, but essentially a lower amount for a couple of years, a medium amount for 2 years that requires some clustering, or a higher amount for 3 years that again requires clustering, meaning multiple homes do it at a time to try to help preserve that uniformity look that we currently have there. Can you move forward for me? Other things, so I understand that I'm blanking on your name, our resident has come up with an idea of what if we did a more affordable fence, a different inside with a stucco outside, to provide that uniform look, but it would certainly be a much more affordable fence for homeowners to be able to do that. So just that's an option that I know council would like to potentially discuss. Just so you're aware, that would require a change to our theme wall code, because what is suggested there does not meet kind of the durability standards that what we usually have for our theme wall materials. And then you'd have to have the conversation, do you just want to, if you do want to make that change, is it just for Alpine Highway, or is it throughout the city as for other theme walls that will eventually also need to be replaced?
Unfortunately, Aaron, we've learned something as recently as 1 o'clock this afternoon. That option is not a really true viable option as far as lasting anything more than 1 or 2 or 3 years. And that's from the professionals. Those are the experts that are saying, I mean, they would have done it in Ridgeview. They did that Ridgeview that we see, the stucco. I thought it was a brilliant idea. I was so excited. I thought Nate Woodbury was brilliant, and I was excited until 1 o'clock this afternoon when we learned that it's really not going to hold up.
Shoot.
That's the problem.
Staff was wondering about the durability, but
The
having not
durability
been
would be the
professionals
problem.
there.
I can no longer support.
Okay.
I'm not saying I don't support stucco. I just don't support it over a wooden frame.
Okay. Any funding that council does choose to put forward on this would likely need to come from general fund balance, unless council has another intention. So ultimately tonight, if you do want to move forward, what staff needs to be able to kind of craft the final thing for you to approve is, how much money are we talking about? How many years do you want this program to go forward? What type of fence do you want? There? And then do you want clustering being required, where it's more than one home has to do it at a time in order for them to receive the grant? So based on that feedback that we're able to get from you, we'll be able to bring back something more solid for you. You're welcome to use our options as a starting point, or use your own that you've come up with.
So can I just ask a question? So it's kind of up in the air what the fence would be made of, right?
I think what we've heard, one of the larger contractors out there is Olympus.
Yes.
And so with that, and we've been hearing, consistently, I think the cost for Olympus fence, which is the precast concrete, is probably right around $90 to $100 per linear foot.
Right.
I'm just saying that, and that is even when we got, me and Ron were on the phone today with Boyer Company, with Spencer Moffett, and we asked a little bit about their theme wall that they were having up in the Ridgeview, because it appeared to be stucco. That's done by Olympus. It's actually a precast. It's concrete, and then they put stucco on top of it. It's a kind of it looks. They don't put stucco. It's a stucco look.
Okay, so it is precast concrete.
It is.
And that's what I always thought.
So this is Alpine Highway fence currently. Brooklyn, will you go ahead? This is a CMU material that's just south of the current fence there that we've talked about as an option. And then here's a handful of precast concrete designs, including one that I know is by your house, Councilmember Smith, and the Ridgeview one is also precast concrete.
Right.
Looks like stucco, but.
A question for Andy. On these fences with concrete, my assumption that the footings would have to go down at least 40 inches to avoid the frost line. Otherwise, you'd get frost heave that will crack that fence. Is that correct?
Yeah, we go more like 30 inches, but
30.
Yeah, but they're to frost out.
Isn't our frost line 36?
So let's look at, well, I think let's go to the first question, Scott, is going to be, what do we want as a theme? We want to have a theme wall and look consistent.
So one question I did have we compared price of the fence in Tim Cove versus precast concrete?
You're talking the brick? I don't think
Yeah.
CMU
We
or
ever done
block.
Is that just much more expensive?
Do you know anything on that, Andy?
When we did get a bid, Andy, was that for a precast concrete or a CMU fence? Do you remember like a year ago? It was precast concrete and it was expensive. I remember that.
Well, the original bid was over $1 million.
$1 million.
Well, Spencer Moffett confirmed today that what they were being able to do is somewhere between, I think it was, what was it, $90 to $100? 105.
Per linear foot, which is the price we've been hearing. Because they're doing that along North County
So
now.
it's consistent. That's what I'm saying, that number's consistent.
Okay.
Yeah, we paid, on 6800 West, now we paid a general contractor, Geneva Rock, who then hired a sub, but we were paying about $125 a foot on 6800 West, last year when we were doing it, so.
And that's on the Costco connector.
Yeah.
And the cost here will be somewhat more than that, because we're doing demolition as well as putting in a new fence.
It depends how that demolition, so do we want to talk about the dollar amount before we talk about if it's precast concrete, or do we know what we want design-wise?
Yeah, I think we need to know what we want design-wise before we talk the dollar, because
Okay.
a dollar needs to be a
So let's
percent.
go down. What's the design would you like to have? Now, here's your core question. Okay, do you want to follow these questions? You had a different one up there. So I guess you got the ground amount, the number of years, the fence requirement for the grant, and things of that nature.
Can I ask one question? Do you think that Councilmember Courtney could tell us what he found? I know we put a lot of work into canvassing, and I would love to know what he found before I decide anything.
Because I think you actually knocked every door, if they answered or not, but I think you knocked every other one of the 31
Partly
homes.
on my-
And we knocked some with you. Yes.
With regard to fence style, the handouts that I left for everybody, if you go to the back page with the two graphs on them, and apologies, I only put this together this afternoon, and so staff doesn't have it to put up. Although, if one of you would like to come grab this one, I will just peek over somebody else's shoulder and you two can share it. That a plurality was in favor of cast concrete. It's not a majority because there was a fairly significant block where they either didn't have an opinion or I wasn't clear on what their opinion was.
But when you look at the options, it appeared they favored more of a cast concrete.
Cast concrete was twice as favored as any of the other options, with the exception of unknown. Now, just because the residents along there have a preference doesn't necessarily mean that that's what we need to go with. But I think that would have been my inclination as well, and the residents seem in favor of it.
I think for longevity, I think most of the residents that we've spoken with, or I think, as you, they all say, hey, we'd rather have a cast concrete there for longevity. And I think also it will act a little bit as a sound barrier. I think it's a better sound barrier too. Is that right, Scott?
That's what we heard when we were knocking doors a week ago.
Yeah.
It's a better sound barrier, because a lot of people were concerned about all the noise, and as well as safety. Precast concrete's a little safer than the wood fence. I mean, there were people that expressed, gee, what if somebody ran off the road, they go right into our backyard through a fence? I mean, there was a lot of concern about it.
So now, with that, so let's talk about that grant amount. If we were kind of favoring cast concrete, what's the grant amount? And then we can talk over you have some options, like you said, that was in your presentation, that kind of gave different amounts here that you could kind of look at. I mean, you have option 1's 120, option 2's 186, option 3's 140. Council, is there any, and like we said, this is a talking point. Is there a dollar amount? If there's no dollar amount, say, no, I don't think the city should be participating in the fence. Yes, I think the city should be paying, half the cost. Option 3, the 240 seems to be pretty close to almost half the cost.
The objective that I've had from day one is that we avoid a patchwork, that we do whatever the most probable outcome of having a theme wall look when we're finished. And we can't control that. All we can control is we have some money. we can put some money towards it, and with that money, you have to do X, Y, Z. If they choose to do something else, they have that option, but they're not going to get the money from us to do that. So my thought is I'm more towards option 3, the higher amount, because I think it increases the probability that more people will get involved and actually do this according to what we would like to see in a theme wall, with the realization that there's always that resident that has the option to say, no, I'm going to do my own thing, and it's going to be X, Y, Z, and as long as it meets our other requirements, we can't really control that. I don't want to control what they can do unless we give them the funds to supplement what they do.
Hey, Aaron, do we have the ability to eliminate the option of reusing the existing style? They can't do whatever they want because it's a theme wall.
It's a theme wall.
But can we eliminate the option of replacing with the current, or is that always going to be an option because that was in the original plat?
I'm hoping Rob is listening and he can text me in a minute and to answer that question.
From my understanding is they could repair, but if they're replacing the fence, they have to come and use.
That's kind of where I'm thinking as well.
But we can, if Rob's on, and if not, but that's, my understanding is if it's a new wall or a new fence going in, it goes underneath the new ordinance of what the design criteria would be versus the repair, they can keep repairing. Now, that might be they're replacing boards and putting things back out.
So I want to express my opinion. I think you all are familiar with it. I understand the argument that we hear often that the city shouldn't be using funds for private fence. But I've thought a lot about this because this is a unique situation just because the residents have been told for 20 years plus that it was city-owned fence. And so I kind of lean towards option 3 too, which is a 50-50 deal. I'd like it to look consistent because we have this beautiful parkway that we spend a lot of money on to maintain every year. And the backdrop of that parkway, which goes right into the center of our city, and we've got all this commercial development coming, and we have 17,200 or 17,500?
10,700.
10,700. Yeah, I get it all mixed up, the numbers. I got dyslexia. But, you know, I just think it would be great to have a beautiful wall along there because it doesn't only benefit the 31 people or residents there, but it affects the whole east side of all those neighborhoods. I mean, and there's hundreds of homes in there. I mean, you've got to go past this wall to go into all those residents, Mystic Cove, Hidden Oaks, you know, the Country Club and all those things. So to me, it's a beautification project as well as fixing a problem. Because when I drove up there today, and there was all that traffic jam and the place where, you know, because of the wreck up there, and there were parts of that fence that was falling over. And, you know, it's a kind of a safety thing as well. So I lean towards option 3. I think if we do it over a 3-year period, yes, it's money coming out of the general fund, reserves and different things, but it's not only those 31 homes, it's all those homes along there that benefit, as well as everybody in the city. I think it's an okay use of city funds, and especially if they're paying 50%. So, you know, the ultimate design, that's up in the air still. How it's going to work, is everybody going to be involved? I think there's a bigger chance if we do option 3. I agree with Ron.
So I lean more towards option 2, and this is why. I think that we need to pay something, I think, to help this situation. But when one of the residents was talking to me about it being a beautification effort, I started thinking about our traffic calming toolbox and the way that we use that, right? Like we have people put in suggestions and then we fund whatever we think is the most impactful and the best use of the money. So when I started thinking about this in relation to that, and okay, if it's a city beautification effort, then is this the #1 priority? And it may be, I don't know, but that's kind of what I was thinking about and why I was leaning more to option 2, because I think we need to do something. But if it is a beautification effort for the city, I think we have to leave funds available for other beautification projects also.
I'm in agreement with Brittany also. I definitely think that there should be some funding there. But this is a priority list as well. And when I look at this area, I mean, this is being traveled by not just Highland residents, but Alpine down to American Fork. Whereas like 10400 North, I mean, that's primarily Highland residents because that's going there and there's no uniformity of fences along there as well. But at the same time, residents were told that this was a city fence and, you know, they were not allowed to replace their fences. And for this, I think there needs to be some type of funding. I like the clustering. I would prefer a minimum of 5 lots that must join together just because I do want that large uniformity there to be able to truly have it be a beautification. So I'm leaning towards option 2 with a minimum of 5 lots must join together.
I'd like to, before I talk about numbers, I'd like to make it clear that in what I'm about to say, that it is my personal judgment and that everybody gets to make their own moral decisions about what is right or wrong on many, many issues, and this is one of them. So I'm going to talk about what I think is right and what I think is wrong, and that is in no way to denigrate the opinion of anybody who disagrees with me. I believe that everybody is approaching this from a perfectly reasonable and moral standpoint. Just want to make that clear before I say this. Personally, I think that it has been an honest mistake over the years on the part of the city, saying that this is our fence, this is not the residents' fence. However, honest mistake or not, it has been said. And I think that it is wrong to wait until the fence is literally falling down and then say, oh, it's entirely your responsibility to fix. I think that the right thing for us to do is hand over the fence in good repair. If we have not allowed the residents to make repairs, not have allowed the residents to make replacements, and we have allowed the fence to get into such a state of disrepair that we have a moral obligation to hand it over in a state of repair. The city took a look at that and concluded that it would cost roughly $250,000 to do so. Now, I don't think anybody wants to keep the existing fence in place. So literally repairing the fence, handing it over, and then ripping it down to put in cast concrete doesn't really feel like a good option to me. However, that's why I come up with the $250,000 number. That's what it would cost us to hand it back in good repair. And so that's what I think we should be spending to do this, because I simply think that that is the right thing for us to do, given that we have allowed it to get into such a state of disrepair.
I couldn't agree more, and I think the 250 on option 3 needs to be shifted to 240 to 250. Scott, are you okay with that? If you are, we've got 3 people.
So let me ask you, I just have a question. Why do we go up to 250? I understand you're saying, because that's more than 50%. If we're hearing that cost 95 to 105, why are we paying more than 50%? Or why? I'm just trying to understand from a taxpayer, and I'm going, from a taxpayer.
It's the probability of getting the outcome that we desire to have. And there are residents that are not going to be able to afford it unless we get a substantial amount of money. And to do the 250, we have to do the 250 if we did nothing other than to repair what we currently have. And nobody really wants that. But if we did that, that's how much it would cost us. So rather than waste that money on doing what nobody wants, let's do it on something that is more probable that people do want, which is the most popular result that Doug found. And I think we require the cast concrete and have a design that we choose. We'll let the staff make recommendations on that, but that we go with option 3 with the adjusted amount to 250.
So let me just ask some logistic situations. If we say over 3 years, I don't know if we can bind a council, I mean, on to the next, even the next year's budget. I'm just saying, we'd have to reapprove this. And I understand this is the fear of all the residents, but it's also the fear, I think, of the taxpayer. We don't know, and let's just, and I always say, we've got to see budget. We really don't know what our budget looks like. If also we head into 2008, and we have residents coming in, so we've made a commitment to them, that I can't go and fund my police, or I can't do some other fund. And I understand I'm trying to paint the worst case scenario, which
So
is,
we're not going to be able to fund the police
well, the question.
if we repair
what I'm
this
saying
wall?
is
We can't do any capital projects? I mean, capital always,
I'm just saying.
I think that's a, I
Mayor,
think
the
that-
extra 10,000 was
I
for
think
the
Kurt makes a
statue
good point, that if we're planning on funding this over multiple years, we have to be looking at the worst-case scenario down the road for those multiple years, and being okay with that.
Yeah, and the thing is, you need to be aware, and the residents, yeah, they might need a jump at doing it. Does that make sense? Because we have it this year. I can't always, you know, if Emmer can guarantee the economy, how it goes, then we can, I'm just, guys, I'm just trying to be a realist here.
what about changing the 250 to 2 years?
I just have such a hard time finding $250,000 for a fence for a beautification project when we didn't fully fund the raises for our public safety. I think that's my biggest issue here, is this was not a priority for me, and I don't see it as a priority. I'm willing to compromise because I think there's a wrong that needs to be right. But for $250,000, I look at my public safety, and I just don't see that as priority over the cuts that we made there.
Well, I understand your concern, but, you know, in all due fairness, this is a drop in the bucket for what it costs us for public safety. And I support public safety, but, you know, we're talking about something that really beautifies the city. And I don't think we're going to have the inability to fund the police in that, because this is coming out of our reserves. I mean, our reserves, we try to keep 35%, but we don't have to keep 35% in there. And every year we were exceeding the 35%. I think we should be able to come up with $80,000 a year, or 82 or 3, whatever this comes out. But I just think we need to move ahead and do it.
Well, no, and I recognize, and I think it was very important, Doug, what you stated, the reasoning why our thought process, because we're going to have other residents say, hey, I noticed you guys did a program for the fence. We want that same thing.
Yeah.
And I think we need to vocalize why, and Doug, you did a good job with it. So you have to vocalize, hey, hold it.
They weren't told that the fence belonged to us.
For 25 years.
For 25
That's the
years.
issue.
I mean, this is really a unique situation, and the reality is the 250 number I like better than the 240s for Doug's reasoning. And that really hits home that let's assume that we're not going to change it, we just have to repair it. We do want to give it to them in good repair because we had stewardship over it for all these years. If we're going to give it to them in good repair, it's going to cost 250. So that decision's made. The amount's 250. Now, let's look at it, is that really what we want? No, it's not what we want. Let's do something better. Let's make it bigger and better and a nicer fence. To me, it just makes sense. The 250 number really, truly makes sense. And I understand the public safety thing, by the way. I couldn't support public safety more than I do, but this is a unique situation that if we were going to give the fence back to the residents in good repair, we know what it would cost us. So let's use that amount.
What do you think about the clustering?
I like it. I like the cluster.
3 houses, 5, none?
Well, let me back up and say I like the clustering, but I also don't like the discord that it may create among the neighbors. If you have somebody that really wants this and is ready to do it and has the money to do it, and he's got one out of the neighbors on each side and can't get 3 in a row, that really kind of concerns me. So
We do the same exact thing when it comes to buying open space along a trail. We require a certain frontage of people, and if they want to buy that, then in order to create that in order to make sure we don't have a checkerboard, that you have a certain amount of neighbors that have to participate in that buying process and in the program to be able to do it.
I'll support that. I think you need to have some clustering to a degree. And it actually, I think it would be less expensive for people when they're putting in
Well,
their park.
And I do think
Yeah.
for cost, they're better to have three being going in than.
3 or 5 or something, because if they went in together, it's going to be cheaper than if you each do your own thing.
So, guys, this is not, this is a discussion item, so we
Yeah.
don't have a motion, but the problem is because there's so many nuances. There was a question, Aaron, we were talking last week, do we want to make this a motion? I go, well, there's still a lot of questions in the air that we probably ought to get it, so we have our motion correct.
I do, it would be nice, although can we do a motion without having a public hearing?
No.
Nope.
Okay.
You can do a motion, but we are hoping for a majority of council to be in
Provide
favor of
direction.
one
Well,
thing
I think
so
we
that we
have-
can bring that back.
You have three with
I- of those- so
250,000.
I've sensed what I've heard from the council, that there's three that are in favor of the 240 or 250, is that correct? What number, 250 or 240?
250 is a number that I think makes sense. I would be willing to go with whatever gives $50 per linear foot. If that is a significant sticking point for people, because that gives the 50% and still keeps us in the ballpark of that 250.
I'll support that, but what'll be interesting, when we do make the motion, it'll be interesting to see how much interest you have in that first to second year. So, it may,
So on the
may
motion-
adjust it, because motion 2 is actually $93,000 a year. We're talking about a little over 80. And so we'll find out real quick if
Okay,
there's
so let me
interest.
just, okay, is the motion for $50 per linear square foot, or is the motion at the 240 or 250 that you want to have the staff put together?
Well, 240 is 51, isn't it? 51?
5161. Are you looking at the $50 per square foot? I mean, what do you want in your motion? Do you want it per linear foot, or do you? I think you're better to almost kind of have as a linear foot, because that's how the residents. Because not every yard's the same.
They're all
allows them to
different.
know the dollar.
Yeah, but you still are going to have a cap each year, or are we saying that if we have $200,000 spent in the first year?
No, I think you still have to have, if it's the 240, 250.
So we have to have the 80,000 or 83, whatever it is, if it's 250.
But you have to make sure that you don't have one resident come saying, I'm gonna go grab all, that you have the $50 per square foot, so they, in their yard, because you had some yards that were 190, and you had some that I think were the 110.
Yeah.
It's, that I
Yeah,
think-
I was astounded, by the way, when I looked at the pictures. I didn't realize that the distance between those pillars currently are a lot. It looks like maybe 20 feet, 15 or 20 feet. You couldn't put a frame stick in there without putting footings in the middle.
Let's come back to.
So Mary, you're just saying we ought to come up with a number per
Well, I think
linear
if you put
square
the
foot.
number of square
Or
feet.
a linear foot,
And then it comes back in, and that linear will come back to your dollar amount of what we then need to budget if it's over 2 or 3 years. Is that correct?
So you do $50 per linear foot up to 100, whatever, $80,000 a year, whatever, if you support that option.
Is everyone agreeable to that? So $50 square foot up to $80,000 a year.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm not saying agreeable, but that's what we have coming forward in the motion. There's at least
So
three of you.
80,000
at
is
least three of you are
51
agreeable to do that motion that
Yeah.
way. Okay.
So it's $50 per linear foot, and it's over 3 years, really is kind of how you want it structured.
Okay, so that makes it less than $80,000 a year. And so it brings it in at about 230 total, I think, and I'm just kind of ballparking.
And Mayor, I will say that even though I support option 2, I fully commend these residents. They have stuck with it, and I will be so happy to vote on this and be done talking about it, and I really will. And I appreciate the good conversation we've had.
Okay, now let's go through on this clustering of, we talked about clustering. Let's go back to your question. Do we want 3 or 5 home clusters or no? No clusters.
Can we, we don't have public hearings scheduled, but can we ask for one? Could I have Nate and his friend come over and tell us what their thoughts are about?
On the clustering.
Is the
I would
council
like to
okay
know.
with
I'm
having the
okay with
comment?
that. I'd like to get more input.
Okay,
I would like that input.
Let's just keep it specific to the clustering, please.
Right.
And because now 9:30, you guys.
But we're glad you like the Ninja Court. Fortunately, there was one.
I thought you were a plant. I loved your comments.
So again, I'm
do you do
Nate,
it with
Nate
Wally
Woodbury.
Ross Kelly? Do your
Say that-
kids do it with Wally Ross Kelly?
Yeah.
He's a good friend of
he's-
ours.
I'm trying to get him to help fund that ninja course.
Cool.
Okay, so clustering.
Yeah, I understand the reasoning behind it. We are neighbors, and so we've got two. We would need to get the third one involved, which I know that they're interested. Timing, I don't know if they're gonna do it in year 1 or year 2 when we've talked to them. So that's the concern, is like, what if we're ready to go and they aren't? But I understand the reasoning.
I think you hit on the head, Ron, and that is the frustration. First of all, I'm appreciative of, I understand clustering. I appreciate it. I'm not against it. It's that what if one neighbor or two, whether it's 3 or 5, says I don't want to, can't, whatever, you know, and then what do you do? But
Well, I actually had one of your neighbors that grab me, was it late? I was working a little bit late last night. And so I kind of saw them amongst the Highland City situation, and they said, if my two neighbors, because they'd heard about the clustering, it's not new, it sounds like their neighbors were, they said, if they don't do it, if I just follow that theme, but I pay 100%, and I go put that in, if I don't, and I thought.
And that
okay.
leaves more of the grant money for the other neighbors.
Yeah, but it gives an option going, okay, I can't get my neighbors, but I want it, and they can do it, but they're not asking for grant. That's just something I think we need to be sensitive to, that might meet, if someone's saying, hey, I can't get it, but I want to get it.
But there might be some that come available. Yeah, I think that's very nice.
Another thought is, the thought of clustering, I guess, is having 3 in a row. But if another advantage to us will be to talk to other neighbors, whether we're in a row or not, because the price comes down.
Correct.
So.
Yeah, I think
That's
there's
why we did
economy of
ours
scale.
together.
Sounds good. Hey, thank you for your
Okay.
input. Hey, council, so would you like a clustering or not?
I like 3-house clustering.
I reluctantly like it.
I'm with Ron. I'm kind of reluctant on it, but Kim's argument is a really strong one to me, that that's our precedent, that's how we tend to do things like this. When there's a benefit to the city in having the clustering, that, okay, we go for that.
Well, that theme wall has been the most critical part of this whole process.
Well, that's
to
what I'm
me.
saying. If it's for beautification, you've got to try to accomplish. Now, they can adjust. The one thing, if we do the 3 and you start to see it's not, the council can modify and adjust. Okay, so 3, it sounds like 3, is that correct? I think the 3-lot clustering. Now is the next thing what the theme is?
I'd say that's the last thing. And so, council, you could kind of give us a direction. We could get some bids and try to find the cheapest thing. We could try to get something that looks kind of like Temp Cove-ish, but is precast. Or we could kind of get some ideas and take it to the neighborhood and let them kind of give feedback. But exactly what that theme is, other than precast, but if you move forward a couple slides, there's a variety of precast, right, as we see throughout the city. So it could look like, one more slide, sorry.
I have so your
Oh,
option
just kidding.
A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, we have precast, which we have along our parkway detail.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, I guess we want to have all the same rock
Yeah,
I would
so-
recommend we
Can
want
I-
the same look.
Can I weigh in on this? If you don't, you want it to all look exactly the same, you have to go with the same manufacturer. Because the different fence companies can give you a similar look. I mean, they all have kind of like some of these common stone patterns that we're seeing here. They'll give you kind of something similar. But if you want it to be identical, the only way you can get identical is to just say, hey, we're going to buy from, and I know that tonight it was mentioned Ridgeview's bought theirs from Olympus. There are several companies that make precast fences, but if you want it to look identical, then you've got to pick such and such pattern from such and such company, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So,
And
council.
would you be able to look at the options and give us some options that we
You
can
give
look
some
at?
recommendations.
And some recommendations based on cost? Because we do want to be sensitive to cost. We don't want
For-
the cheapest, but we want the best quality for the best price.
For the most part, and this is a very generalized, it's going to be more of a cost per company, meaning generally you don't pay more for pattern A versus pattern B from that company. It's going to be more, this is what company A charges. I know we had the neighbors that gathered a price from, I want to say it's Ridge Rock, but it's Ready Rock. You got Olympus as well, but you had, one of them does a thin lift. They have concrete on the outside and they have a foam or something on the inside. You got one bid from them. I can't remember the name of it right now off the top of my head, but so yeah, often it's more about that company and that product more than like they're different patterns. They often, you know, it's like you pay, I'll just say $100 a foot, whether you pick pattern A, pattern B, or pattern C.
Yeah, well, I think the $100 is the number we would like to shoot for, because we're saying $50 is going to be 50%. Let's make $50 50%, and try to find something that will be consistent, that we can choose from. That's $100 a foot, a linear foot.
Whatever we do, can we bring back that option next council meeting and not ask, like, can we just decide next meeting and not have another discussion about it? Yeah, but next meeting, I mean. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, it's time for us to get this checked off.
There are 2 additional items that I sent an email to everybody about on the 15th that came up when we were canvassing. The first was a gentleman who was wondering about the ability to put a gate in the fence. And the second was a request to sign an agreement with the city ahead of time that if I, as a resident, complete these steps, that the city will reimburse me.
They want to make sure if they spend the money, they get it.
I would hope that's the standard operating.
Well, no, but what they'd like is an agreement. What they're saying is that they can apply for the grant, and we've approved them for the grant as long as they go in this time period and get it done. But the funding's there for them. I think that's what they're.
And there's a clear written agreement that they can hold in their hand.
Well, you just have a grant agreement because it's a grant, so that's essentially what's going to happen is a grant agreement between the city and them.
And then that way they know there's funding for that year for them.
Right.
And we'd probably have to say, okay, you have to be making progress by this time, just like, grant. I think that's a good, it was a good concern brought up by a resident.
What do folks think about a gate?
In terms of gates, I remember, I'm sorry, I know Rob sent me a text or an email and I'm not finding it, but we do not typically allow gates on theme walls, right? Like, I mean, we actually have, like, around Mountain Ridge Park, they put gates in, but that's not a theme wall, it's just a fence, and so we typically have not allowed that.
Yeah, his comments were whether to allow gates would be something that the council could consider as part of approving a different theme wall design for the area. Currently, we don't typically allow gates and theme walls of this kind, though we do allow gates into parks and trails generally. That's what he sent back to everybody. He may have sent something different to you as well.
But this is a park and a trail, which is interesting. You'd agree.
Yeah. Is there strong feelings one way? I'm not really favorable. I don't know why I understand the gate when we talked to the resident was to maybe let the kids get to school a little closer. I don't know if it's, I would prefer not to have gates. I think it's just, you don't have that issue there. But if we haven't allowed it elsewhere. Once you start here, then you'll start seeing gates elsewhere.
I lean against the gate as I support the mayor.
That would be my inclination as well.
No gates, no gates.
I think we're looking at an extra couple hundred yards that someone has to walk to get to the same point without a gate.
Yeah, and the gates really take away from the theme wall look. I mean, we're doing this for a reason, and we want to hold to that reason.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Aaron, we're okay to move off this? Okay, now let's go on to number 4B, which is a personnel policy, the FMLA updates. And I guess you're now acting as our city.
We're getting closer.
Getting closer, and I'll say Jess is really disappointed she couldn't be here because she doesn't get a ton of chance to interact with you and wanted to do this with you. And I really didn't want to do this one. But Rob and Jess are the other ones who have been working on it. So I've told a couple of you this, but this in no way has to do with any one individual who may or may not be in this situation in the recent future. FMLA. Council has shown a tendency recently to want to provide some flexibility when it comes to FMLA use. So due to recent changes with federal law in pertaining to FMLA and some recent happenings with other staff members, we wanted, as HR and myself and legal have been discussing, we wanted to provide or at least talk to council about the option of providing some additional flexibility for staff members in relation to FMLA needs with paternity leave. So could you move forward for me? Thank you. So FMLA Basics 101. So FMLA covers the birth of a child or placement of a child with an employee, if an individual, I should say, for adoption or foster care, caring for an immediate family member with a serious health condition or your own serious health condition, or there's some provisions related to military service as well that covers, or that FMLA falls under. If you are required to provide FMLA, which we are required to do, you have to provide 12 weeks of unpaid leave for an individual who qualifies for FMLA. We do allow employees to use leave time if they want to receive payment, because we aren't giving them any extra payment during that time. If it's a medical reason that you're taking FMLA, something that a doctor has said you need to do this, we can't set the schedule. It's all based on what the medical provider has told the employee that they can do in relation to work. If there's not necessarily a medical necessity, so say a little while after the birth of a child where somebody is healthy enough to work, but they might want to have a different schedule, we don't have to provide that flexibility. We can set our own schedule because there's not a medical need at that point. The employer has the control in that situation. So federal laws changed in that FMLA now covers bonding child time with a new child, or actually a child who is coming to your home through foster care or adoption situations. And then also there's a new law for the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act that essentially kind of acts like ADA for pregnancy for employees who need some extra accommodations that aren't overly, there's a specific word, but burdensome to the employer. So currently what we have, right now, if somebody is going on FMLA, we require them to exhaust all of their time from a vacation in their sick leave bank. And that's to prevent an employee from taking 12 weeks and then all of a sudden they come back and say, I need an additional 12 weeks or something. So we don't, I mean, while we certainly want to provide that, we have needs as well as an employer and need that employee to do work for us. Okay, so specific to maternity leave underneath FMLA, if there's not a medical necessity, we allow two different options. You can take it all at once, 12 weeks continuously, or you can do 8 weeks continuously, so you're off for about 2 months, and then you come back for the next 2 months and just do it part-time for the next 2 months, and then you're fully back after that. So first, we want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Not that anybody has ever accused us, or we haven't, but we intend to comply fully with federal law or anti-discrimination. The second change this would do is we don't require them to completely exhaust all of their vacation and sick time. We say you've got to use all of your admin and comp time, which does not apply to that many employees. It depends on your position. And then you do, again, have to use all of your vacation and sick time, but you can leave 40 hours in each of those so that, you know, we want you to be able to have a vacation or deal with the fact that a child or yourself could get sick at a certain time. And then we also clarify that maternity leave actually means parental leave. It's not just for women who have had children, but parents in general. And then essentially, okay, so if it's, to look at, okay, what are the parental leave options? Again, this is the drafted proposal in front of you. Number one, again, you could use a continual block of time, do the full 12 weeks. Number two, the schedule as required by your medical needs, as outlined by a doctor. And then number three, if there's no medical requirement, but you want some kind of intermittent leave where you slowly work back, ask for a schedule, right? Propose a schedule, and then Human Resources, myself, the supervisor will discuss that schedule and see, will that work for what we need, for your position, what your job is at the city? Depending on if your position is a computer one that doesn't interact with the public a lot, you know, you could probably work from home for some of that time and that would work. If you are a field worker, working from home isn't really an option for us. So it would be based on the employee's responsibilities and their job at the city. The permission would be granted on that requested intermittent leave that they would request there. So it would, all of these changes, why we're proposing them, to allow them to preserve some leave time and not completely exhaust their bank. Create a more family-friendly work environment, because I think that will allow us to recruit and retain some really good individuals that we want to have that diversity at our city. I think it leads to a better organization. And then if we have an employee who's in a situation where they want to take paternity leave, but they don't want to be off for a full 2 months, they don't have to be. So they want to start coming back early, this would provide them that flexibility to do that.
Can I make some comments?
Please.
I support these changes. I think we need to always be family friendly, and I think if you have some flexibility here, it helps your employees stay. Because I think one of the things that we want to do is try to have retention of our employees, so it's not a constant retraining and that. So I support this. As a clinician, though, who fills out these forms, it would be very helpful, and I just want you to tuck this in the back of your mind, Aaron, as the city administrator. But it would be nice if when people and the human resource people, when they're given these forms to take to their clinician, that there's maybe an explanation exactly what they want, because I have so many people that walk in my office and they have no clue what these forms are for, and they have no clue how long they're going to be off work. They have no clue, and it's really a problem. And the forms have improved over the years, but they're still not there, especially if you're getting FMLA for, like, you're the father and you want to be there for the first, period, or you're caring for a loved one. It's really hard to explain that in the FMLA. So it might be real helpful, and that has nothing to do with the motion tonight, but if you just had kind of, okay, you're going to take the FMLA for this is an explanation for your clinician, because it is really hard. And then I get them back and get them back and get them back, and it's kind of like, oh my gosh, So it's hard on the clinician side. So just a little idea there. But I support these changes. I think they're very family-friendly, employee-friendly, and retention-friendly.
I support this as well. I think that any chance we have to do that provides our employees with a benefit is a good thing. When we're not able to give big raises or anything, I like doing things like this to support. So the reading through the policy, what would happen theoretically if the city administrator needed to take leave? Who approves that, and how does that work?
That would be a consultation between Human Resources and the mayor. Perfect.
I
Theoretically.
applaud these changes. In fact, it wasn't until the third bullet point of the previous slide, because I did have some concerns. Didn't feel like there was a lot of flexibility, but that third bullet point in the previous slide really identified the openness of this and the flexibility that the supervisor, you just agree to what's really right for this situation, because every situation is a little different. And being able to have this flexibility built in, and the fact that we are now consistent with federal law, gives me 100% support of this.
Okay, once again, this was just a discussion item to have. We'll see this come up on June 4th. A lot of these things they'll probably be on expedited, because we've went through that. Is there anything else on this FMLA?
It's not exactly on the FMLA, but regarding them being on expedited, my personal preference would be for them to be on consent, and somebody can pull them off if we want to.
That's true. Expedited would be a consent. What you're saying is, if we've discussed it, it can go on consent, because you've already got everything put together.
And again, if there's somebody who wants to
You can
pull it off and disagrees with something and wants to vote no on it, any one person can pull it off of consent.
Or needs to discuss, maybe amend the motion somehow.
Not trying to make this a big discussion, but you mean just about this item specifically, or any item we feel like there is broad consensus of from the council?
My personal opinion is any item that we think we have broad consensus.
Okay.
Erin, don't smile so loud. I think she's, if you haven't seen this,
That
she
gets
smiles
us
like
into
a
the next-
cheer.
You know, I might have sent a text to the Chiefs earlier saying I'm impressed by your poker faces, because I do not have one. Staff joked that COVID was kind of good because we had masks on. Those are gone.
Okay, we'll now move on to item number 4C, which is our conditional use permit code requirements. And Erin, that will be you also.
Okay, here
Oh,
we go.
actually, is it Ron? You have Ron and Ron.
Oh,
Yeah.
so this was a request from Councilmember Ron Campbell. I have some details kind of outlining the staff report, but happy to let you
Yeah,
start.
let me just start by saying, I understand, Scott, that they're not elected, they're appointed. And we, as much as possible, we would like to have that accountability unelected. But the fact is, they are appointed. And shame on us if we're appointing planning commissioners that we don't trust. We need to be able to put some trust into them. I served 5 years on the planning commission, and quite honestly, was before the state required some changes that I applaud, the changes that the state required, but I felt like it was 5 useless years. I didn't feel like the council was really listening to us. And I believe that the staff has the ability, on any conditional use, there's going to be staff work looking at what do we have to mitigate. The staff have the skills to do that. They're going to make a recommendation, and that recommendation will then go to the planning commission, and I believe that we need to appoint planning commissioners, and I believe we have. As I go through those planning commissioners, each and every one of them, we've got some really good planning commissioners, and I could name names, I won't, but they're good people that I trust. And I'd like to be able to trust them in conditional use permits and get us an agenda that we can get through before midnight every time we have a council meeting.
So let me just bring a counterpoint, though. I guess, are we discussion or just you're presenting it still?
It's still.
Okay, so I understand where you're coming from. One of the problems is, and like the conditional use permit for the church last week, not a big deal. But we've had some conditional use things that have come before the city that are very controversial, and we've had as many people as we had here tonight on conditional use things. I think about some of the buildings that were being built on the west side of the city and design and all that stuff, and they were conditional use. I just get a little nervous because the legislature has taken a lot of this stuff and given to the Planning Commission, and I agree, there are great people on the Planning Commission, but at the same time, again, you know, I have this issue, they're not elected, they're appointed, and so I think if you get some real controversial things, I think sometimes the people are going to expect it to come to the council. And so, you know, I'm halfway, I could go halfway on this, but to turn all conditional use permits just to the agreement of the Plan Commission would be a little worrisome, I think.
And I'm perfectly willing to talk about residential only.
Yeah.
And that to me is a good starting point, but we've always got the future where we can take another step if we need to. And I believe in baby steps. So I could support the residential only.
Brooklyn, will you jump forward to, there's a slide that says potential areas to amend. So this is kind of some areas, if you are interested in doing it, here's like 3 areas you could look at, right? So who approves them? How many public hearings are you holding in regards to them? And then what types should be conditional versus permitted uses? And then the next slide talks about the things that are conditional use permits in residential zones right now. So if, for example, council really didn't feel like any of those were largely concerning, that it could be handled at the Planning Commission meeting, we could just, you know, make some code amendment changes that says conditional use permits in residential zones are at the Planning Commission level as the final authority. Or some of them could just become permitted uses as well as another option.
So I don't have a problem with most of these except for your towers. Because I remember having 200 people coming in complaining about a cell tower that was going to be built in their neighborhood. So
Sorry, that was actually me. Now that I think about it, I really wish I had that cell phone tower. Oh, man.
Well, so, you know, some things like that are pretty controversial.
And I look at, when we talk about commercial, to me, a communication tower feels more commercial than residential.
Sorry, those are conditional permit or use permits allowed in residential zones, if that makes sense.
But others, I have no problem with these others. We could put museums all over.
So then, and I'm going to bring up one
And
we've
art galleries.
seen in the news, and let's just bring it up. It says church and schools. Let's assume that the LDS Church decided to build a temple on the Longhorn Field. So that was their, they're not going there. We know where they're going, but if they'd done that, you'd have some that would want to run in, and I'm worried about lighting, I'm worried about parking, I'm worried about congestion. Now, we see this where I think, it's not really come too much to some of the city councils. It has on some of the cities, it's only going to planning commission. Now, I'm not saying, you never can foresee, one of the things that we always hear about is Toscana. That Toscana was approved as a conditional use by the planning commission.
Yeah, and we changed things after that because
And
there
I
was
think
a
that, and I'm
stink
not
about
saying,
that one.
to me, I like it, like you're talking, Ron, is residential if we have some safeguards, and I don't know what those safeguards, how we can put in.
Maybe we just ask the staff, because this is just a discussion tonight.
Correct.
But ask the staff to put some meat around this so that you understand, I think, the spirit of where we have some conflict here, and get it to where at least we have a good portion of conditional use permits that are residential in nature that the planning commission could approve, and the rest of it would come to the council.
Now, a conditional use like the no-build zone that was over there by Dry Creek, I think that would be a conditional use. I don't think it would have come to council. I think that.
Which one would you say?
Do you remember where it was that there for French Country Estates, the no-build they wanted to put, that would be a conditional use that we filled up here. But the planning commission, however, that's where I think you have to decide. Okay, was the outcome even what the planning commission recommended is the same as what the council? It probably might have been the same.
I don't think that was a conditional use. I think that was conditions on the buildable area
Okay, so that would
on
not
a
be-
lot rather than a conditional use.
Could we do something like conditional use would go to planning commission unless 2 city council members wanted it to come to council? You'd have to have 2 council members and
Is
pull
that
it.
something you can do?
I think you would probably want to make it clear for the applicant from the beginning how it would want to be handled, right? Just from a fairness standpoint for them to
Okay,
know
if they know
who
that
they all
council
have to
members
go
wanna
to.
pull it to bring it, then they know that at the very beginning. I don't know if we can do that. It might be someone. But it might. I'm just saying, I think that's a good option. That if we're seeing something stirring up there enough that the council feels, no, we ought to be discussing this, that's just something we have Rob look at. That gives some caveat of comfortability. But what happens, that public clamor, it will be the ones with the public clamor that will come in. Not your Chepstow church thing, no one cared about the pavilion.
No, of course not. Well, and that's another option. I mean, some of these, maybe they just become permitted uses, right? And they don't have to go through, and like staff could be the final authority on those. Actually, and I'm not trying to grab anything here. I'm just saying it was silly for you to have to approve a pavilion at a church. My thought got lost.
Can we give the ninja court to the planning commission?
You could also eliminate the public hearing component at the council level if you wanted, and then they could just be on consent too. Like if we feel like it's something benign, that's also an option.
We all have the option of attending the public hearings at the planning commission. If we have the planning commission doing public hearings, I don't know why we need to do a second.
I would personally prefer not to have any public hearings at all
Oh, you're just talking about.
for CUPs. And I'm, just to be clear, I'm talking about city council and planning commission. It's an administrative decision. If somebody wants to chime in, there's a public comment period. But having a public hearing suggests that we're going to listen to what the public is saying. And for an administrative decision, that is allowing public clamor to
Have
rule.
you ever, we've attended enough, sometimes that public clamor brings out some good things that maybe you hadn't looked at.
Right.
And I understand maybe they could do that during the public comment at the very beginning.
And I think you have to be really careful not to cross the line on transparency and being open, because then, you get conspiratorial feelings amongst the citizens. And I've always been in favor, it's hard to sit through some of these public hearings. I've always been of the opinion that they are beneficial, because sometimes they just let emotions be vented and the people understand that we're listening, and we do make adjustments based on those. So I think you always have to be open to transparency and different things, because I think in the long run, it sets up a better feeling in the city. So just be careful with saying, hey, we're not going to, and I understand where you're coming from, but I think you have to be really careful.
No, I absolutely agree that we should be listening to people and allowing time for people to speak. I think that the public hearing, the public comment section is an appropriate time for that. And for conditional use permits, I would prefer not to have an official public hearing section before it, but this is certainly something that different people can have
Right.
different opinions on, and
Well, I think you
they're all
definitely need to
reasonable.
have a public hearing at the planning commission at least. But I think we ought to delineate the different kinds, because, you know, if we tried to put a cell tower in the middle of a neighborhood and just had it approved by staff, you know, good luck with that.
Well, and if you look, so let's look at our public comment. Some cities limit public comment for 30-minute maximum.
Right.
So tonight, yeah, well, I think we were an hour and 15 minutes or so. So tonight you're going, okay, now it's 10 o'clock, we still have work to be done. We had an hour and 15 minutes.
I would just like to say I would love to have it limited to 30 minutes, just because I have found that it's pretty much, if it's the same comments, then we know what the gist of the public wants.
So was that on top of the half hour we took to explain things?
No.
No, you're right.
Yes,
Yeah, but I
yes it
agree with
is.
that.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And I would probably, and we took time so that they can make.
Try to explain things.
I would like to, the mayor to consider altering your introduction to the public hearing when you say, if somebody's already said something, just let us know that you agree with it. And just eliminate that. And say, if somebody's already said something, don't say it again. If you have something new to add, only come up if you've got something new to add. That's a change that I would like to see made, because tonight we heard a lot of people saying, I agree with this, and they went on to go on to state why they agreed with it, but all they did was agree with what was already said. Does that
I
make
agree
sense?
with that. Okay. let me
Okay,
ask you,
well-
on conditional use, have we gotten enough information back for staff to kind of what we're thinking, or do we still need more information?
I think that I wouldn't be excited about writing this code, so I'm not sure how Rob's feeling, just because I think that there's a lot of
There's still
nuances as to what you're comfortable with at a staff level versus planning commission level. I am hearing maybe eliminate it, the public hearing down to just the planning commission. I think I got 3 on that. But in terms of, well, okay, let me see if I can summarize. So, public hearing only at planning commission level, and see if we can move some of these residential ones to the, can't remember what we call approval authority is at planning commission instead of coming to city council. Okay, the ones that we feel like are probably more benign.
But if they're commercial, I think they need to come.
But all commercial ones still come.
I think they need to come to city council.
And I would personally love to see us take this as an opportunity to switch how we're doing our code and go with that table of what the land use authority is.
Yes, I know what you're referring to.
Yep.
Any further discussion on this item?
It is now 10:01.
It is 10:01, so we need now a motion. We have communication items. Let's just look across our communication items. We have our police that are ready to report. How much time do we think we need to go through all this? Can we be done in 15, 20 minutes on communication items?
I'd say you probably want to hear about school district. Everything else isn't necessarily timely, though they keep getting bumped forward. So,
Okay, so council, do I have a motion, what you'd like to have happen here?
I move that we extend the meeting to 10:30, recognizing that we can always adjourn for closed session or earlier than that.
Can we pick some of the communication items that we think are more critical for tonight? I mean, I'd like to hear the police data report. That can't be real long.
I just read the report, so it looks good.
Hey, no, hey, Scott, we have okay, let's go through your police. We'd like the calming toolbox. Andy, is it just giving us an update on speed bumpies?
We were requested to give an update on everything that we were studying and what's going on there, but
You wanna hear
it's
that?
not time critical. It can wait.
Okay, that one can be, that one could go forward.
So the school district boundary reorganization.
We do need to hear about that one, just to get some dates. Short-term rental, Kim, is that important tonight?
No, we just got to close the loophole so you can push
Okay,
that off.
accessory structure restrictions, Scott.
I think that can be postponed.
Okay, right-of-way, driveway connection, Andy.
That can be pushed.
Okay, and council policies and procedures, conflict of interest, Aaron.
we can push it.
Okay,
So that leaves the police data report.
And school district.
I'd just
The
like
school
to
district?
remind us that we've had an awful lot of things that we're talking about being on the June 4th agenda, and we have an hour-long work session ahead of the council meeting, just for what it's worth.
Up to you guys, if you want to go to 10:30, you might be able to get a lot of these together. What would you like to do?
I can do short-term rental in 30 seconds.
Yes.
So.
Oh, let's do
well,
that one.
actu-
Hey, do we have a motion, what we want to do? Are we going to go till 10:30?
There's a motion, but it has not been seconded.
And is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Okay, you have a second. Is all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There's not. We're now going to 10:30. Chief, you're the first one.
I will be very quick. Just what I've heard in this meeting, the thing that stuck out to me in this meeting is agendas from here on will be item number 1, public comment, 2, consent, 3, adjournment. Is that correct? That's what I heard. Okay, great. I think we're all on board with this. All right, let's move through this very quickly. Can you put this up on the screen, someone?
You can read this. I got to bring
I'm-
4 pair of glasses.
I'll be really quick because what you have in front of you, you can look through, and if you have questions, I'm more than happy. We can talk offline. What you have in front of you is just some monthly activities for the first 4 months of 2024. If you want to look at Highland, which is the bottom box of the two, Alpine's listed first, the second one's in Highland. And for those of you that are on the PSD board, you've already seen these numbers. Let's focus on what's happening in Highland, and what you're going to see, even if you focus on both of those, what we deal with in the police department is more quality of life issues than criminal activity. When I talk quality of life issues, we're talking about residents that are needing assistance. The car doors that need to be unlocked, accidents that take place, animal complaints, suspicious calls, things that happen after hours or during the evening, or sometimes during the day. And then the fifth one there under calls for service is lockouts. Those are people that need their car doors unlocked. As far as criminal activity, I'm looking at January right now. Our top 5 criminal activity for Highland was frauds, sex offense, DUIs, assaults, and child abuse. And again, those are single-digit numbers. These aren't something I think that we need to be really concerned about or worried about. But crime does happen in Highland. Crime does happen in this area. We don't have it in the frequency of other municipalities, but it does happen here.
How does our DUIs, now that we've passed a new law, compared to last year? We have 3 now. How many do we have last year?
I'd have to go back and look.
I know we don't have.
Well, we haven't built establishments yet. Let's talk after we've built establishments. Okay, great. And then you can look through the rest of the months. I'll just briefly go through them. The calls for Highland in the month of February, we responded to 702 calls for service. Traffic citations and traffic stops are listed right below that. There were 257 traffic stops in the month of February with 140 citations in Highland. In that pie graph chart to the right is a breakdown of time spent in the cities, and calls for service. So 70% of our time in February was spent in Highland, with 30% in Alpine. And you can move through the months. They're very similar. If we look at March, the top criminal call we got was criminal mischief, but again, quality of life, citizen contacts, animal complaints, lockouts, accidents, we had 20, and then fraud, there was 9. Fraud should actually be moved down to the criminal calls. So as a broad view, and then I'll happy to answer any questions and we can move on. In the first 4 months, we've responded to, in Highland, 3,134 calls for service, which is an average of 783 calls a month in Highland. And those are not necessarily criminal calls, but that's when people call and would like to speak with an officer about anything whatsoever. This is just contact with residents that we've had over in Highland during the month. So at that, I know we want to be conscious of the time this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I wanted to thank you for this information. I
Sure.
think it's very helpful. How does the fact that we have SR 92 in North County and these big arterials going through our city affect some of your stats here?
Well, certainly
compared to Alpine, 'cause
they
don't
certainly
have
play
those big
into
roads.
it. They certainly play into it because there are more calls for service, there are more residents that live here, and there's more traffic that moves through Highland than does Alpine. So that certainly plays into it. I mean, even this evening, we had a 3-car accident here at SR 92 and Timpanogos Highway and Alpine Highway. We don't get very many of those at those intersections, but they do occur, and we do have, there's a lot more traffic.
It'd
that
be
moves through.
unusual to have that in Alpine.
Sure, yeah. And although it does happen, and this is the access, is the gateway to American Fort Canyon. We have a lot of traffic that moves, a lot of people that are from outside of Highland that move through Highland to get to American Fort Canyon, especially on the weekends and during the summer.
And you really can't get to Alpine unless you go through Highland. So, I mean.
Correct. Yeah, we do have people try that come over the top and get stuck, but it happens on rare occasions. So.
I have a question. When I'm looking at the percentage of traffic stops versus citations, why is the percentage of citations issued in Alpine so much more than it is in Highland?
I think we're just looking at frequencies of stops. In Highland, I think we're roughly about 40% of traffic stops get citations. You have more contacts in Highland, and you may be stopping them. Let me give you a good example. So there are more traffic in Highland, and after hours, officers stop for headlights, mechanical violations. They don't always issue citations for those. That would play a portion of that. That's not all of it, but that's a good portion.
Is there political pressure to do more? I mean, we're part of the board. We hear Alpine sharing, hey, we want tickets issued, and we haven't been necessarily saying, hey, issue tickets in Highland. Is that playing in any of the aspects?
It certainly has its influence, but as you guys, you're probably aware that as an entity that issues citations for traffic law, the state law does not allow us or me as the chief to say you will write X amount of citations. It's up to the officer's discretion. That became under quite a lot of scrutiny this last legislative session. There was legislation that was proposed the last 2 weeks of the session. It did not get a committee hearing. I anticipate that particular legislation will come back in the early session in 2025. So there's a lot of eyes watching what law enforcement's doing and how cities look at it as a revenue generating source, and the legislature does not like.
Since you're giving a report to the whole council, we're hearing in the news about Draper trying to do raises in this illness. What is the average wage of a police officer in Draper, and what are they trying to raise it to, and how does that compare down here to Utah County?
I haven't looked at Draper specifically. We've kept a close eye on what's happening in Utah County because by and large, we see some leakage into, when I say leakage, from Utah County officers moving to Salt Lake County for wages. Most of them tend to stay here in Utah County because it's a great place to work, and Lone Peak's a great place to work. We are not by any means the highest paid agency, but we are competitive. I think we've made some adjustments this last fiscal year that will keep us competitive and that will allow people to stay here. But I think we're going to come right around in the 50th percentile. We shot for 60, 70% on the charts that we had, knowing that everybody else around us was going to move. So we're moving to a 27.50. I don't have the number off the top of my head. $1 an hour for a starting officer. Lehigh is moving to a $30 an hour for a starting officer. So these are just the things that we're paying attention to and trying to keep an eye on. So we talk a lot about recruitment and retention. We've struggled with that since 2020 in the wake of George Floyd. We had a lot of people, there was a mass exodus in law enforcement. This last year is the first year since 2020 that we've had more law enforcement, have more people come into the profession than have left. So we're gaining ground.
I'd just like to make a brief comment. I know I oftentimes come across critical, but I really appreciate all the service that both the police department and the fire service, and I really appreciate the fact that I've seen a lot more traffic enforcement, or it's been a little more visible to me, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate, you kind of put your you know, from the recent experience they had in Santaquin, you folks are putting your life on the line when you work, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words, and it's appreciated.
Okay, I actually met a new officer, was it 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday? Surprised me to hear that he was self-employed and decided to come in and be a police officer. It kind of surprised me. Like I said, you're getting different individuals starting to come in.
Yeah, he's 3 years younger than I am, and he's just starting into this game, and I'm just like, you're a brave man, because it's a young man's game.
He seemed like a really pretty good guy.
No, he's going to be great, and I love that he's got some maturity, he's got some experience behind him, life experience that will really help our younger officers. It's kind of mold them. So.
Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Regarding, well, just real quick, regarding traffic in Alpine, there's an academy right beyond the roundabout. I go to take my new puppy to the vet in Alpine, and that's backed up around the back. Does that result in more accidents? Are there more problems as a result of that backup? Because it's every day when the school starts and when they close, the parents drop them off. They don't have school buses. So the parents drop them off, and the lines are just absurd.
They're horrendous.
And I've been in that line with the grandchild that I had to drop off at that academy. So I've seen it from both sides. But it was very frustrating, but I'm not as concerned about the frustration. That's a reality. We're not going to stop an academy from being there and to have all the parents dropping off kids. But does it result in more of a traffic problem in terms of accidents?
It results in congestion. It doesn't
Just the
result.
congestion.
Yeah, it does not result in accidents or property damage or things like that.
As we heard from Ryan, our expert in traffic, that was saying that when there is more congestion, there's typically more accidents because people get anxious and they make moves, sudden moves they wouldn't. And I'm just trying to confirm the reality of that.
Well, our reality with that particular situation is it's so congested, there's nowhere for anybody to move but forward.
Okay.
So, and you know, they're not traveling at speeds of more than 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour if you've been up there. So
Okay.
You just bump into people.
Okay. Thank you. Chief Patton, it might be kind of nice to also at some time report to the council about different calls. You'd mentioned something in the past that, you know, and we could have it another time, maybe put something together. Because you're saying that calls were starting to change as we age differently, that the calls are starting to change a little bit in our community.
it's still shown on the monitor up here. So
It's
forthcoming. Yes, Chief Patton and I have been working on something that he's getting ready to get to both of the councils.
By the way, Chief Williams, thank you. Okay. We will now move on to item number 5C, which is the school district boundary reorganization update, and that is from Rob Patterson.
Slash me. So high level, oh God, can you bump forward? I'm sorry, just so I remember what I intended to say. Oh good, there's not too many slides. Okay. Okay, so we have heard that there is a potential legislative interim session upcoming to fix, because there's a number of unclear things with the current code, right? With the new code intended to help this situation. So the attorneys are meeting tomorrow to get some draft language put together and hopefully get that done by the end of the week to provide to the legislators who are running that bill.
Would that be the entire
Yes. Yes. What else will happen? In addition, Lewis Roberts Birmingham, formerly known as Lewis Young, is doing a feasibility study for the interlocal cities to look at that. We are it turns out, even though we're one of the smaller of the cities, we have the biggest council chambers. So we are going to host the presentation from LRB. From a timeline perspective, at this point, it's fast. LRB is uncomfortable with the timeline, but understanding the realities of if we want to get on the ballot and meet all the criteria, they've got to get that done by June 18th, which is our big budget night. So we need to have that meeting here in the council chambers. And a question all of us are asking our city councils is, what time can you all be here to get it done? I think we realistically need 2 hours, at least an hour and a half. But that is right before a city council meeting for us that we need to hold all of our public hearings related to the budget. So if we could start at 5 o'clock, that would be fantastic, but I do know that that puts extra pressure on those of you who also
Have day
doing
jobs.
day jobs in addition to all of this. So, no, the later we go, the later that our budget meeting has to go. So,
You know, I could be here at 5 if I know ahead of time that's when we're going to meet. I could just arrange my schedule.
okay.
What
I
about
don't-
the rest? Is everyone else with 5 o'clock?
I can do 5 o'clock.
What can you do it, Brittany? If you knew ahead of time.
If I know ahead of time, I can do 5.
Okay.
Oh, this will be, this is subject to all those cities, so everyone that's doing if you want to say the central district, all of their councils will be here that night of the 18th. We will hear that presentation from the LRB, and it is, and then we'll have that, then we have 45 days after that to hold our public hearing.
Correct. So that won't be a public hearing that night, and I think we want to make that very clear, just because that would be very hard to accommodate that. So it's just a presentation, and then after that, for us, assuming we wanted to keep it on city council nights, it would mean July 2nd and 16th, we would hold our public hearings. And then on August 6th, all of the cities would need to vote whether or not to put that item on the ballot.
I have one request, Erin. I would like Rob to present us with what our role in this will be, what we're allowed to do and not do as far as advocacy for something that we've created.
Hey, can you move forward to the next slide? To be decided type of things include that we're hoping will get solved in the legislative session, include what communications abilities do cities have? We don't really know what election code this operates under, because whether it's a ballot proposition or a referendum or differs how we can communicate. And so we're hoping that that will clear up, because right now we don't have a good answer on that. So yes, that election code and what in the world is going to get on the ballot? Can two proposals that potentially conflict with each other get on the ballot? So we're hoping that gets cleared up in the legislative session.
Anyway, so there's some questions that this is what we're hoping the legislative session will address. And so some of that, because I think there are a lot of questions, I think what you're asking, and I think we probably won't answer them the 18th. 18th will be a presentation, no public hearing. It's strictly a presentation. There might be time for us as council to ask LRMB questions, but we're not anticipating allowing the public to ask any questions. Does that make sense? Because it's not a public hearing. It's for us to get a presentation and to us ask questions. But just so you're aware, every proposal will have some type of tax or cost implication with that. And we'll probably hear from LRB. They'll be looking what Alpine has given out. We had I think a meeting was 2 weeks ago from Alpine, or I guess it was a week and a half ago, and they might have different numbers. Because I'll be very open. We sat with LRB. They were wondering where some of these numbers were getting pulled from, because they can't back into something.
So let me just ask a quick question. You're going to have the councils from 5 cities here, and in order for them to meet, they're going to have to announce it as a public meeting. So it's going to be a public meeting for the whole end of North.
They can come, but we won't have a public comment.
Okay.
So we'll set up as many chairs as we can fit in this room, and we'll turn on the speakers out there in case people want to come.
Okay, because I bet you'll have people come from all.
Oh, and
Can we charge?
John,
Could we
this will
charge
be-
admission?
Is John, are you awake? Nope. Okay.
Mr. Hart.
Oh.
And
Well,
we,
are you catching on that June 18th will be a really important broadcast night?
and we're excited to figure out how to stream that and make the audio work and roaming microphones and all that stuff. Thank you, John.
It will be a big, I do think you might have news here. I don't know. We're getting the press state. News might not be here. It depends what's going on.
I'm not bringing cookies.
Well, we are going to have a security board or something like that. Hey, that might be the thing to do. Look, what Highlanders, do you guys not do this at your council meeting for your residents? Amazing. No, that one board was really pretty amazing.
That was a nice board. Thank you, Brooklyn. You did a great job.
Well, it was one of your friends. I was saying that might be, then we could. Is there, I don't think there's anything.
30 seconds. Short-term rentals so it says that they have to be owner occupied. Is it in the intent of council that that means that the person who owns the home is there when it's being rented, or that they live in the home 50% of the time? Because we found there's technically a loophole in that code.
They're there when it's being rented.
Yeah. So essentially, you could go on a vacation for 6 months and then Airbnb your entire house. I think our intention of the city council was that essentially you'd have to live in the home and you could Airbnb your basement apartment. So do we want to close that loophole? When it says owner occupied, it actually means it just has to be, it just has to be your primary residency. And so you could technically. I guess, go on a
What
mission.
is your feeling, Kim?
I mean, if we want every house to be an Airbnb, then don't close the loophole. But if you want to be able to have a certain degree of accountability, I like that it has to be owner occupied. You could Airbnb your basement rental.
The owner has to be present.
Present
Yeah.
in the house if you are going to rent it to Airbnb.
So I agree with that. And the reason I agree with that is because the one that caused all of the reorganization on these codes was in my neighborhood.
The party.
And the family moved away, and I support this family. They were a great family. But they had a manager in, and they brought busloads of people. It became the party house for the county. And they left a mess in the neighborhood. So I think I really support what you're saying.
Yeah. And just in other cities actually don't even allow short-term rentals. So this is a little bit of a compromise.
I'm okay with that. I think that as I was thinking back to the discussion when it was originally passed, I think that a significant part of it was knowing that there is somebody who is a resident of Highland that we can go and we have somebody who we can choke if there's a problem, basically.
We don't know if we'd really choke them, but we at least could get a hold of them and hold them accountable.
We might. We might.
Well, they have to be accountable.
They have to be accountable or
Accountable.
It's getting late.
Not fiscal, you know.
I get it. Okay, I think we can now take a motion to go to closed session.
For the purpose of do we know-
Litigation.
Discussing potential litigation.
Second.
I have a motion by Ron, second by Doug. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're now in closed session.